Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business tonight is to, and I'll give you a little bit of background. Some of you probably already know that Gerald Wynn has got some serious health concerns. So he's in his 56th year as moderator here in Littleton. So he's concerned about who's going to replace him. So we as a board kind of visited as to what, who and what and how, and so we approached John Hennessy if he would be interested in filling in at least for now until the March 22nd election, and he has agreed to it. So I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Unless we have other discussion.
Discussion?
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we put in John Hennessy for
Second the
moderator.
motion.
Okay, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, good.
So the moderator is gonna be appointed by the people?
Ultimately, he has to be elected, he or she has to be elected.
But in the meantime, Rudy, we appoint an interim.
Why John Hennessy? Why? Why? When you got another 6,000 people in town,
Mhm.
why?
We felt he was the best for the
Oh, you
position.
feel that, right? Okay.
We did.
You do.
Well, we
We.
did, yeah. So the next order of business is the Fire EMS Commission. So we've got to either appoint the chair of the Budget Committee or a Budget Committee member. Discussion on that?
Has anybody put in for it?
No, I haven't received anything, nobody from the
Nothing.
budget committee.
The budget committee is requested to be represented.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend the chairman,
Okay.
only because she can, she does the numbers very well, and it would be helpful to have her there. She'll be angry at me because I made this statement, because now she's gonna have to spend some more time on another committee, but she would be the one, I think.
Okay. All right.
Do we need a
So
motion, or?
the chair of the Budget Committee is Diane Cummings.
Right,
Probably should have a motion on that.
And
I would move,
and maybe a motion to appoint her and/or her designee from the
Yes.
board, so that way
okay, that's good.
internally she could maybe,
Yep,
where we're
make a
not getting
decision.
somebody, then she could put somebody in her place.
I would make that motion to appoint or Diane's or designee to the, to this.
EMS
committee.
Commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now second it?
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Then we need another appointment to the Broadband Committee, and it has to be one town official. So that's
One of us,
One
or-
of us.
Madam Chairman, later on, we're going to be talking about the negotiating
Mhm.
FC contract. I would like to do that. I don't mean to jump down there, but I wouldn't mind doing that one as I would like to do that if we could, if I could,
Okay,
or consider that within the context of making this decision.
okay.
So, on the broadband committee you're talking?
No, I would prefer being on the negotiating.
Okay,
committee.
on that one, yeah, right, yeah.
So it comes down to you and I, Roger. I wonder if we could go, because there may be times where Roger couldn't make it, but I could. Jim, what's your sense on that?
I can variously ask that with,
As long as they had representation, we could split it.
Yeah.
You want to do a
Yep, we'll just keep each other up to date on what's going on. Yeah,
co-chair?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'll do that with you. That's,
All right, so probably we should have a motion on that then.
I'll move the motion to appoint, what?
Roger is the primary
Roger
and
is the
Carrie is the
primary
backup,
Yeah.
representative to the broadband committee.
with Carrie.
And Carrie
As
being able to
backup.
replace him if needed, or when.
Okay,
and I can second.
all right, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good. Thank you. Under old business, we have the administrative end of it, information update to the building lease agreement between Bank of New Hampshire and the town offices. And Chris Logan and Cindy and Tony are here this evening representing the Bank of New Hampshire. And I want to just pause before we get into this. I want to pause and apologize personally. For our last meeting, we talked a lot about the rate going way up without giving consideration to how good you guys have been to us. And I did some research on that too. For 21 years, the first 3 to 4 years, no rent was charged. And we had to move in to the second floor, what was then Laconia Savings Bank, and it was intended to be just temporary. And we never mentioned this the last meeting, so you guys were very good to us then. And the interesting thing is the bank paid taxes to the town for that space, which was around $6,700. So in other words, we stayed there for a price of $6,700. In 2002, the town manager at the time was Don Jutton. He had requested an extension. The town was going through a major downtown revitalization, infrastructure project, replacing water and sewer lines. And the town manager at the time asked if the bank would allow the town offices to remain at no cost. So now we're into our second, third year. The value, again, for the taxes that were paid were around $8,300. So we didn't pay rent, but we received taxes on the building. And 2004 became the first year the town entered into a lease agreement with the bank. So since 2004 until this year, we have paid $8,100 a year. And in some cases, the taxes were more than that, which meant the bank, in essence, paid us $1,800 to rent. So we had a balance, a positive balance of renting without anything theoretically going out. So personally, I want to say that we are extremely grateful for what the bank has done over the years. We are at a position where we know the rent has to go up. We also appreciate the graciousness. $17 is the high square footage amount. It could be anywhere from $1,200 to $1,700. The other commercial places show that that's the range. They've graciously offered us $10 a square foot, but if we continue doing the bulk of our banking with them anyways, which we have done for 21 years, that it would be down to $8 a square foot. So again, another a thank you and sign of graciousness.
Point of clarification, how many banks were involved in that lease? There was more than one bank.
Well, Laconia Savings Bank was the first bank, and
Right.
then I thought Bank of New
Indian Head?
Hampshire took
Indian
over.
Head. We've had four or five banks in that
Fleet.
building.
No,
There was Fleet.
it began with Fleet Bank.
Okay.
And Laconia Savings purchased Fleet.
Okay. So over the years, we've been treated very fairly for the $8,100, which in a sense too, in some of my research, it looks like that was really more to take care of our share of the utilities. So, but anyways, I mean, I certainly don't want to belabor this, but I think we should have shared a lot more last time about how good the bank has been to us on the financial end of it.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, we do have to, I guess, talk more about the building lease agreement between the bank and the town offices. Did you have more on that, Jim?
No, the town attorney was out, and she returned this last week, and based on her schedule, she hasn't gotten back to me. I can just tell you a couple of the points that were asked. That was the term. The current proposal is 5 years with no out, and we're looking for some language that maybe gave the town the opportunity, if it chose to pursue to build or purchase, that with proper notification to the bank, you would be able to terminate the lease sooner than 5 years. The way it's written now, if you did that, you'd owe the balance of the lease. So you would be tied in for 5 years without the option. The other question is, we needed a history of utilities, because in addition to the lease, we're gonna be paying 25.5% of the utilities, and since I don't know what the utilities are, I can just assume 8,100, but that's been 8,100 for 20 years, so I don't know what that is, so we'd add that to the lease total. And then there was just some questions about the maintenance and repairs. The lease pretty much leaves all of it to the town, even on some major items. So those are just three things. The attorney was going to comment back in reference to some language that could allow for a 5-year, but could give the town the option, if they were to pursue to build or to buy a new office, that you, with proper notification, you wouldn't be obligated to pay a balance. And I just don't, so those are the points that are with the attorney.
So that last one is giving us the ability to leave.
Escape clause.
She hasn't gotten back to us.
No.
Because the other question had to do with the language that would force us only to do business with this bank.
That has to be that's a question that, yeah, they have to clarify. In reference to loans, I'm not the lawyer and I'll let that there, but I'll just give you an example. If we were doing a loan for a substantial amount of money and their loan was 3.5% or 4% and another bank in town was 2.5%, we might get a lower rate for renting, but what you may pay on a loan could actually cost the taxpayers more money over than what you're saying in the rent. So the attorney needs to clarify, can we be tied to guaranteeing 100% of the town's business with one bank in town without being competitive like we are in everything else?
How we survive here with the taxpayers is to be able to go to all of the banks when we need a TAN and get the best rate. That's how we survive.
It's
Okay.
typically how government works. I mean, in the private sector, you're not required to get
Yeah.
alternate bids and
I
whatever.
will say this, though, history has shown that the Bank of New Hampshire has been very good to us as far as rates. And to clarify, I mean, I asked if we did have a chance to get a rate at another financial institution, if that would be okay. And there is flexibility there. The other thing, too, that I should have mentioned and I didn't, is the Bank of New Hampshire has provided us with MS9s and MS10s for years, which would cost us money to have those prepared, and they're doing it for us.
Let me clarify. I have nothing against the Bank of New Hampshire. I don't have anything against anybody. My job is to provide you information, and regardless of the history, and Carrie thankfully is able to fill that in, but my role is to bring you a document. I went from 8,100 to 43,000. The history for that is for you guys with your constituents, and which is very appropriate to give them a background. But the same thing, without a 5-year out, I mean, you may be fine with that, with no question. And with banking, I just think those are issues that you should at least have some flexibility or some ability. Something could change. I mean, I know we hypothetically just talked about a building, and then since that building was mentioned, there's other people in town have come up with buildings. And just, not that there's any decision to be made, but I did get a pricing from an architect, and for example, it'd be $4,500 to assess the Opera House, and then $3,000 for any other building that needed to be assessed, just to determine what the cost would be to bring that building up to standards in reference if you wanted to make it a town hall. So like, again, nothing at all. I have nothing against the Bank of Hampshire. I have anything against any bank
Yeah.
or anybody here.
Let me state something individually, not representing the three of you. A 432% increase to a long-term tenant without the courtesy of a notice and a sit-down meeting, I found a little bit offensive. We've been a long-term tenant here for many years, and even though you've only been with us for X number of those years, I think when you get a 432% increase through the mail, I just found that a little bit discourteous. Not intended, obviously, but I just felt it was discourteous.
Courtney?
Courtney. I can see how that would be your perspective, Bill. However, if the information shared by Carrie is accurate, we've actually been charging the bank for us to utilize this space. So I'm just a little concerned that we've done that disingenuously. I also think it's valuable for the town to have its own space that it owns for its town offices.
Right.
So I think that the conversation about the lease should end. There should be other opportunities and options assessed. I
Right.
don't think that going back to the Opera House is the
Well,
best
that-
decision. As you already said, we've grown out of the space.
Right.
So I think it's time that we do look at other alternatives.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. The other issue, though, is that as the interim town manager, I initiated the question about the renewal. The bank wasn't even aware of the fact that we were out of a lease for 3 years. So we raised the question, and we got an email back with a 432% increase. And there was no, we need to sit down and talk to you and just phase this in, or talk about why we need to do this. It was just simply given to us. And so, that's why.
Carrie, can you call on me? Thank
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to clarify a few things. We did come on May 17th and meet with the town manager and went over all these facts. And we explained that the rate had to go up. We explained the position of the bank. We explained we were doing work in the building.
Okay.
And we explained that we were going to have our attorney draw up a lease and send it to you for discussion. So
Okay.
that meeting did happen, and
All
the
right.
bank was clear about
I
that.
take that back.
And we did tell what the current rate, based on people from the town of Littleton told us, would be between $12 and $18 a square.
The 41,000
That was
is,
discussed
yeah.
on May 17th.
The 41,000 is a legitimate number. I was taken back when I saw the 8,000. First time this was raised to me, we're without a lease and we haven't had one for a few years. And I said, we gotta get a lease back, whether it's me or Jim that initiated it. But then then I wasn't part of that meeting, so I'll take that comment back.
We were also aware a lease was sent to the town in 2018. The town chose not to sign it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that was how we are where we are today. We were spending time on planning on some of the renovations that were happening in the building. All those factors came together for us to say we need to have a lease that, we can't be losing money on the second floor.
Right, well, understood.
Which we've been doing for 20 years.
Right, I understand.
But make it very clear, at no time did they say there was a 432. I have my emails in front of me,
We know.
and so I don't want anybody to think that I was given that information and I didn't pass that on. They gave a number of somewhere between $12,000 and $13,000 as costs, and then we talked about taxes.
Yeah.
The next I heard was a lease that came from an attorney, not from the bank, and I reported it to you all. So I don't want you to imply that you updated me at that meeting on that. You didn't.
Well, we updated you that we never gave you a number. That's correct, because we didn't have it at the time we were going through our due diligence. And $13,000 was simply our HVAC costs and our electric costs. It's nothing for capital improvements, nothing for space, nothing for our cost of being in that space. So we said that we were going to have an attorney draw up a lease and send it in for discussion, which is what was happening.
Okay, and that's fine, but I just want to clarify, because you made it sound like you'd given me those information, and I didn't have that
Well, we
number.
gave the information that the lease had an increase.
Yes, and the bank, and
We
the,
didn't have a number.
and the Board of Selectmen were aware that there would be an increase in what we were anticipating. In fact, I sent several emails following up for that in May, and I didn't hear anything until September.
Sydney?
I also would just like to clarify as well that we did speak to what the average was for the area, but taking into the longstanding relationship, there would be a discount on that. In addition to that, the lease that was sent to the town in 2018 that the town chose not to sign, which made it a month lease, was for 5 years. It was for a shorter term. I can't speak to why the town chose to go to an at-will tenant, but when we came, we discussed that we were looking to renew the lease. And it was, our meeting was after Mr. Gleason sent us a lease proposing a 7-year term. I will tell you that the language in that lease, there were no early outs. That's not typically found in a commercial lease. The same repairs and maintenance costs were listed in that lease are as in the new lease. The only items that we are asking the town to be responsible for are repairs and items on the floor and in the space that the town is renting. Not major repairs to the building, not major repairs to any systems in the building, only in the areas in which you rent, which is a normal, standard commercial lease.
And I had nothing to do with the drawing up of that lease. That was the lease that was handed to me and asked to be sent to the bank. So I don't know who drew up that lease.
Anything else you want to add? I mean, obviously, we'll be back in communication for sure. Courtney?
I think it would be beneficial if we go back in the records to 2018 when that lease was proposed and see, unless someone remembers, see why it wasn't signed at that time. I think it would be beneficial to the public.
We may never know. It was a different administration.
I understand that there's meeting minutes, and ideally that's something that would come up during the meeting. It's, so be it if it's not, but it's worth taking a look.
Thank you. Rudy?
Yes, I just want to remember, the settlement that all the other towns around Littleton, it's like a better land. They have their own place. They don't pay no $42,000 and no $8,000 a year for the building. Franconi's got cemetery right in the town hall. That's where they do all the meeting and stuff like that. We are the only one, right, that rent upstairs to the bank New Hampshire, okay?
I could be wrong, Rudy. I think we may be the only town that had its town building threatened to be, what's the word?
Demolished.
Not demolished, but
Condemned.
thank you. The state came in and they looked at the wiring,
Yeah,
they looked at the jail cells downstairs, they looked at everything they had to look at,
yeah.
and they said, you can't be here. So that's why we moved to the bank initially, and that's why last time I said, this came up at the deliberative session or at the town meeting, and the selectmen at the time promised that we would be going back there once the renovations were done. Well, it didn't happen, and it just took on a life of its own. So, that's why this
About
happened.
the discussion that you guys had behind the closed door about buy family dollar for $2 million and make it other town hall.
Yeah, there's been no secret discussions, Rudy.
Well,
There's been no secret
okay,
discussions,
all right,
and
but
we
why-
have,
Why don't
put
you
it,
decide or something like that for $2
we
million?
put it- we
You
put
got
it right
nice
out there.
parking, nice building, and you don't have to go through all this increase of 400 to 700%. The people will be very happy.
so it looks like we'll do a little bit more discussion, and we'll do it publicly.
I heard,
Any other public comments on that as far as with the rental or ideas? Okay, good, and thank you for your input. I appreciate that. And the next item of business is, again, under old business, is the police administrative end of it. Authorization for the chief of police to issue raffle permits. And we had a discussion at our last meeting about this, but I believe this discussion, chief, is about solely you taking care of this versus with you and the town manager.
That was a discussion that you had. I think it was a recommendation that was passed on to this meeting. Currently, if you have to do a raffle permit, you have to go to a couple of locations to get the permit signed off on, but we're the ones that issue it and review the ticket think it was an effort for the board to streamline the process for the applicant, to get the permit issued a little bit quicker.
Okay.
And that would be my recommendation as well.
So for the last, how many years that people have asked to do a raffle, it's been both the town manager and
That's
yourself?
correct. So
Okay.
because we're in different facilities, we hold the application at our location. We currently just put it online so people can actually, they can actually upload a copy of the ticket that they're going to utilize for their raffle, as well as fill out the application. So we've made the process extremely, it's been streamlined. And so it's certainly your decision, but if you want to make it easier for the applicant, we'll certainly do all the work rather than having to go to 2 different locations and have the manager sign off on it after we reviewed it.
About how many do you get a year?
Maybe 3 or 4.
Okay. All right. So I guess the recommendation would be that the Littleton Board of Selectmen vote to authorize the Chief of Police to review and approve the Town of Littleton's raffle applications for a permit and to remove the town manager from the raffle application review and approval process to simplify the raffle application process for the citizens of the town of Littleton. Or maybe even beyond. It may not just be citizens. It could be out of town too. Discussion on that?
I'll move the, if we have to discuss it, we can move it after we put it on the table.
I think we're on the right track with that, so,
So I would move to adopt the motion.
Okay,
and I'll second it.
all right. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Next order of business, again, under old business, is the assembling of secondary broadband committee.
Yeah, this is why, I mean, I think it's important that you all are involved. I've been sitting in on some of these Zoom calls, and it seems like the committee has been around the track a couple of times, and we're just at the starting gate in reference to information. In fact, I've even asked the state representative if he would get with this folks and maybe set up a specific meeting to come and completely update, because they're talking middle mile, back mile, final mile. Somebody's throwing out that there's 103 miles of Littleton that might need to be done, and that cost is anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 a mile. So I mean, they're starting to talk some serious money. And then this email came out from the Haverhill town manager through that committee, saying now he's supposed to put a recommended 5-member broadband committee to start budgeting funds for that committee, keep a capital reserve fund for broadband, appropriate a warrant article for broadband, acquire grant writing management services, begin planning for local broadband, the last mile build out, and start building relationships with local partners. And I don't know who that is, because in all of the meetings they're talking about with New Hampshire Electrical Co-op. Well, the New Hampshire Co-op doesn't serve most of our area, and I kind of asked that question, and it's like I get no answer. So it's like anybody reach out to Littleton Water and Light, is their poles going to be utilized and what have you. So I know you appointed a citizen at the last meeting, is definitely sat in, and so when I hear back from is it Mr. I know-
Egan?
Egan.
Egan.
Yeah, Tim, I was gonna say, but Representative Egan, he was setting up some meeting dates, and so I would propose those, and I tried to have him get them along with the Board of Select meeting, so it might be a presentation that's here, or if need be, a separate work session, just so we know.
Right,
Because,
this question should be asked.
yeah, I mean, because when you start talking 103 miles and $15,000 to $30,000 a mile, and folks are saying, put your ARP funds all towards that and what have you, it just seems there's been a lot of discussion about broadband going on that has not included us. And so I just want to make sure
Just seems like a lot
we're
of
at the
tax,
table and we know what,
Well-
if anything. I mean,
a lot of tax dollars being spent for private, business to get the dividends off the top of it. And I know it's probably a good thing that people want it, but the cost of it is just gonna be astronomical.
so this was more just of an information that came out of that last Zoom.
Yeah.
And so the next step is then, is for us to get our, what I call our one-on-one meeting and kind of get brought up to date, so we actually know, one, who set it up, what are the goals, objectives, who identified 103 miles in Littleton, where is it, and then are we supposed to be doing discussions with our own water and light utility and what have you, just so we have some way to plan. Right now, I kind of feel like I'm sitting in a meeting and it's just, it's all happening at 30,000 feet and I'm at 3 feet.
I know the meeting we had here with Representative Egan, he said that there would not be any taxpayer funds expended, and yet it says budget funds for use by the broadband committee, so they're looking for towns to put budget, and I wasn't aware of that either.
So on that one, and this is just information, and I'll be following up with him on getting a date so that we actually know then what is the plan and the commitment, and whether or not how Littleton participates, and, you know, what's our step from there, because kind of without a plan, I have no idea where we're going.
Roger's correct that private citizens or businesses benefit from this, but so do kids in school. I mean, broadband, and long-term, broadband is a magnet for drawing businesses to this town. You know, so there is benefit, but you're right, in the short run, it looks like it's not. Long-term, though, I think this benefits the entire community to have that sort of access. It's just, you're right. It's just
I think there is
expensive.
too, but the problem I have with it is for taking people's tax dollars and building this system, and then you get a monthly bill that goes to
Yeah.
wherever, just doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah.
So like I said, as soon as I get dates, I'll coordinate those back with you on that, just so then we have an idea what it is we're planning for. Okay.
Thank you.
Good, thanks.
Thanks for doing that. Next on the agenda is under old business, fire department, update to get permission to surplus engine 6. We didn't have support material in that because we went over it last month, right?
Yeah, that was,
Yeah, I don't have any supporting material to go with that. I've reached out to a couple companies that restore fire trucks and try to sell them type of thing. None of them really had an interest in the truck just due to its age and the mechanical issues and the rust issues. I spoke with the fleet manager and stuff. I talked about kind of farming out parts of the truck, the tires and stuff. And he said the tires are pretty standard. He said the problem is that if we take the tires off the truck, we don't have anything else to put on it. And he said there may be some value in the tires, but he said the truck is gonna be stuck there in this. He said we don't keep any of the scab tires, from previous units that we could use on it. His recommendation was to use Municipal is the name of the company, which is an online one that we can register with, and I can put the truck on there and send it. I think they notify across the country and put it out that way to kind of, if you will, get rid of the truck that way. He said the biggest thing would be another department that has the same vintage truck that would want it for parts. And he said it's tough to try to find one of those because of the age of the truck, which is the problem that I'm running into with a lot of people that I talk to. They don't know of anybody that has one of those trucks that's in need of one right now. So it's almost one of those things that if you find somebody, there may be some value in it, but it's trying to find that person. And that may be our best way of trying to do it, is to put it out online through one of those companies to blast it out and see what we get on it for a bid. And I can talk to you guys afterwards about putting a minimum bid on it or something like that, or, you know, whatever that mark is gonna be there. If we don't get anything at that level, we can reconsider where we're going. So
Okay.
that's pretty much what I have right at the moment.
People are getting creative with the old fire trucks, though. We saw one this past weekend that had a flatbed on it, and they
Yeah.
were hauling four-wheelers, but it was an old fire truck.
Yeah, I spoke to a representative from, I believe it was 603 Brewery, because they have one that has taps on it and stuff like that. And they converted it, but they said that they got the truck for free because it was somebody that was just looking to get rid of it. So they did put some money into it, but they said they weren't gonna buy a truck for that purpose. So I'm kind of looking out there, I'm trying to find it with everything else going on, just to see if I can find some way of getting some money for it. I just haven't been successful as of yet.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very
Could-
much. Thanks for the update on that.
could there be a motion then to authorize him to surplus it, or do you want him to come back with,
Um, what do
like,
you-
we're almost
what do
spending
you
as much
thought?
time and money as the
Yeah.
I know it. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my problem is
give
I
them-
just hate to have it go for $1,500, cause if you needed the motor that's in that, it's 15,000.
You can always reject bids.
You can reject the bids?
You all have that, right?
Yeah.
So if we go through municipal biz, and that does countrywide, whereas if we just did sealed bids near here, it would be the local.
Yeah, there's some companies throughout New England that I can send it to, but when we get outside New England, I'm not familiar with those departments or those companies that would sell it outside of New England where maybe, and I can look into municipal and get back to you and give you an update of what that does or what the cost is with that.
And I mean, I've had some familiarity with equipment like that, and, I mean, there are two issues. They do get you a broader audience, but they take a percentage. So sometimes what you gain, you lose an admin cost. And then the biggest issue would be is if they're too far outside the area,
Transportation
it's the
costs.
transportation. And then if you tell them they gotta come and get it, that may negate the value, or if us taking it to somebody negates the value. So, I mean, there's, when it's this old, I mean, usually if we were doing a vehicle, maybe in a little less timeline, that's a little easier, but I mean, but with these, I mean, while we can get that broader audience, but my gut's still gonna tell you that I think it's gonna be real difficult and probably is still a nominal
Okay.
result in the cost.
Courtney, you had a question?
Yeah, Roger, my question for you is just, what's the benefit of holding back on making a motion to surplus it? If it's going to give us an opportunity to see, to entertain offers and bids. I mean, $1 is better than 0. And right now, that truck is not giving any benefit to the town.
Yeah, if we were to drag it to Lisbon, it's 5 cents a pound, which is a lot better than a $100 bid. And that's
Right,
what I'm
but
looking
we
out
don't know
for.
what the bids are, because we haven't
Right,
put it out
and
there.
that's what we're saying, if we get out here and just get some bids on it, then we can make a decision.
So are you going to make a motion to surplus it and open it up for bids?
We need to open it up for bids, but we've got the right to reject the bids.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
So do you want to make that motion then?
I'll make a motion for that.
Okay,
A second.
all right, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good. Thank you, chief, for doing that. Your updates, Jim, on the.
Yeah,
hospitals?
we held back that one small parcel, notified DOT, took them a few days to get back to me, but I did tell them that it would all be contingent upon if you approved a swap with them on a later date for the piece on South Street, that they had to provide an environmental study that there were no contaminants on the South Street, so ball's in their court.
Good.
Good.
Under new business, we have the financials to go over the August financial report.
Jim, I want to thank you for the analysis you did and sent to us. I met with the financial director. I have some corrections that have to be made. These are just wording corrections, and I have a few questions. So how do you want to deal with this? Do you want to just, if we go page by page? Or?
Sure, yeah, that'll work.
Okay. So is there anything you want to say about your comments that you have made?
Well, while you will see individual line items within the budget that either haven't been expended yet, and some of those I find out they're year-end expenses, so you may look at a line item and say, oh, we haven't spent any money. And I'll give just an example, selecting salaries. They're apparently paid at the end of the year, so nothing shows out of there yet, I mean, in terms of there. But the key thing for me as a manager, I mean, while we're working on the new budget now and the drafts and what have you, and we do look at these individual line items on everything from postage, equipment and costs and whatever to see what they're tracking. But the bottom line for each department and the town as a whole would be the last number. And right now, the goal in this report is as of August, is for that number to be 33.4 or higher. Means then that we're either right on budget or we're under budget. So So we can, I mean, start from there, and then that way, I mean, we can talk about individual line items, but the key will be, still will be the department and the town as a whole.
Through August.
Through August.
The
This is,
town of Littleton has underspent $520,000, $520,913.37. And half of that is the bond payments that we haven't made yet. So 257,800 is 50% of that 520. And then there's, small items, around, within the different categories. So actually, we expect to come out $1 ahead. But right now, we're $520,000.
yes, with, as you said, I mean, with some items that don't get expended until towards the end of the year. As I gave you in the cover page, we are running, based on trend, we are running over on legal. We've expended, there's only 26.71 left for the year, and that, again, look at that number, 33.4. But this isn't just, dealing with the Mitchell Group that deals with our day-to-day leases and what have you. This is also involving the Amanuensick, real estate, issues that go on when people do abatements and appeals and what have you. So I've revised that legal amount going into 2022. But the other is HR personnel is over budget, and it just was I think a miscalculation on workers' compensation, which is not a cost.
No. She's getting billings into her budget now that are being moved from other categories.
Okay.
I met with her on that.
Okay, then,
So it's legitimate, it's just, it is over, but it's because they're moving things to the HR budget.
yeah, I mean,
Line item.
and it may end up being over overall because they may not have put what they should have in each department.
Right.
But I mean, but what my point is there, it's not HR has spent more money
Right.
than what is. Workers' comp is a bill you get based on history, and so sometimes you guess, based on your history, what that is. But advertising is over, and, you're required to do your advertising, and it's just based on the amount. So again, that number just will be looked at historically for the next budget. Fire department, but this can be added to added cost personnel. I think that were added as part of the EMS program. And then, as you've known for some time, the welfare was over budget, but we were able to recoup, I think it was 125,000 of that at the last meeting
Yeah.
out of the 8 ARP funds.
If you annualize that number that we've got right now for 8 months, it comes to 266,238. So if you take 8 months and divide it into the number and then multiply by 12.
Yeah,
So we have to come up with a policy, because every year we budget $25,000. Something obviously has to change there in terms of.
yes, and I mean, and I know that's a line item that the welfare officer would be asking for certain amounts of money, and my understanding is that traditionally has been cut, because it's kind of an easy thing to cut on paper, but the hard thing is that it may look good when you cut it, but you end up spending what it has to be based on state law. Now, there are a couple of things happening that are in our favor, right? The trend has dropped from the original early reports. So, I mean, if I look at July and August, I mean, that monthly amount went down dramatically. We're also diverting, Chairman General got information from Senator Hennessy with another local organization that their ARP money, almost like ours, can be used. And so we're able to partner with them, and so some of those costs are being shifted off. We are trying to see whether or not we will get hit when the moratorium on evictions is gone. Will there be a slew after that? Now, what I did find, though, is that the moratorium on convictions, evictions, was only on property that had a federal mortgage, meaning a Fannie Mae, FHA or what have you. So if a lot of our rental property in town is privately owned and there's no mortgage on it, then those folks didn't have any mortgage or rental protection, so we may not see the spike just based on the ownership of the property. Keeping in mind that we still have 100,000+, I don't have the number right in front of me, of ARP, so that we can still utilize that if we do see that COVID go through the balance of the year. But that was just my highlight on every other department is at or under budget.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, thank you for putting that together
Yeah.
for us. Appreciate that. I don't think we have to go, this is just informational purposes,
Yeah,
or did you have more?
I want to publicly make two statements about this, because this is a public document. The health officer on page 1, it's not a salary, it's a stipend. Salary implies that it's paid continuously. It is not, it's paid twice a year. And on page, fourth page in under planning and zoning, the part-time zoning officer, the concept of part-time means there are certain hours designated. There is no hours designated. And that's a stipend as well. So just so there's clarification there regarding that. I had a question regarding wood pellets. When wood pellets became the answer to all of our problems, following normal market procedure.
wood pellets?
Wood pellets, yeah, we use wood pellets for heating.
They look like
The
rabbit
hospital,
food.
in fact, heats its whole building that way now. And I notice we're running out of money because the price of wood pellets has gone sky high, is my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong. But we have three different departments in here that are using wood pellets, and if you look, they're almost out of money. It's a small item, but it's more the issue of alternative energy sources. And we all knew this was going to happen as soon as that became a real demand, as an alternative. I have one other question I'd like to ask, if I can. Maybe we've already taken care of it.
With the verbiage, Board of Selectmen, I can check with the finance director so they could be able to change those words to take part-time out and zoning officer / stipend, health officer / stipend, just so that it's clear.
Yeah,
So salary.
Lori's clear.
Yeah.
She
Okay.
agreed. She
Okay.
didn't have a problem
Okay.
with that. No, I guess we covered it because we went right to the ultimate underspending number, which is $500,000. And half of that is just on the debt service itself. And that's just a matter of scheduling the payments.
Okay.
So I'm fine, thank you.
Roger, did you have any questions?
Nope, Milt just covered everything that I was.
Okay, good.
And I would add on that, if we have completed internally, all departments have submitted. And I met with all departments last week, so waiting then for my next meeting with Lori.
For the budget?
For the budget assembled, so we can see what that is. And also, I think our first meeting is set for October 7th. But once, because I've been gone since Thursday, I got back at 3 o'clock today. So I'll check with Lori just to see how that came together. But, some departments were very good in finding some additional savings, and some others just based on some line items we had to honestly adjust and budget for realism. But but we are looking to be as flat as possible.
One department very proudly said to me that she saved she left. She saved $11,000. She's coming in $11,000 lower than she was last year.
Good,
Yeah, and there were several
we like to hear
that
that.
had done that. I was pleased the effort on everybody's part.
So next on the agenda is our very patient Parks and Rec group regarding Mount Eustis and the MOU lease.
My name is Caitlin Laveroni. I'm the Parks and Rec Director for Littleton, and I've asked Mount Eustace President Caitlin Krumperman, as well as many of her board members, and Tyler Ray of Granite Backcountry Alliance to start this discussion.
Want me to start? Sure. Hi, thanks for having me today, Board Selectman, Town Manager. Appreciate the welcome. Tyler Ray with Granite Backcountry Alliance. We are a two-state organization that develops blade skiing, which is also backcountry skiing. You might first say, well, what the heck is backcountry skiing in downtown Littleton? Well, what backcountry skiing is it's similar to lift serve skiing. It's human-powered skiing. So you need to, like hiking up to the top of the mountain, there's certain equipment that you use to skin to the top. Skinning is an old tradition prior to lift skiing. And you get to the top, you take your skins off, and click into your skis, and you ski down. So right here in town, you have an unbelievable natural resource here with Mount Eustace Ski Hill, and Caitlin and her crew at the Mount Eustace Ski Hill. Gang has been operating the mountain since, well, they revived it in 2014, I believe. And so there's two issues tonight that we just wanted to address. The first being, and I'll let Caitlin speak on behalf of the lease, but I'll just summarize briefly. The first issue is that as we started talking as a partnership and a collaboration manner to help bring more recreational activities, particularly wintertime activities, to Littleton, we discovered that the lease had expired several years ago. Another one of these lease issues. And so, although they have been operating since, and doing a great job bringing out, folks from all different abilities, backgrounds, and really unbelievable programs for those folks that can't necessarily go to Bretton Woods or Cannon all the time with the high ticket prices. It's really an unbelievable local youth and adult programming that they have. So the first issue is we would like to request that the Board of Selectmen authorize a 1-year lease, which is within your powers to do, and during the next year then they would get the necessary votes and seek a longer-term 5-year lease. And we did prepare a lease that was highly similar to the prior lease that the town had authorized in 2014 through its warrant process. And so that's what we'd like to say on the first part. The second part is the reason Kayla and I were talking is that we would like to provide or infuse a little more excitement to Mount Eustace Ski Hill and make it a little bit more of an attraction to not only the local residents but those from away. Granite Backcountry has specialized in this area where we work from Haverhill, New Hampshire, all the way to Rumford, Maine. We have 12 communities. That's a wingspan of 120 miles. Count how the crow flies, and 12 communities that have benefited from recreational activity. A lot of towns you see around the state here. Franklin is a good example with their whitewater. They're leaning on the recreational economy. North Conway is a great example with hiking and mountain biking. And Littleton, without a doubt, has also benefited from that with such things as Parker Mountain, among other nearby amenities. So Mount Eustace is also right on that list. And so what we're proposing to do is, looking at Mount Eustace, the looker's left side is all wooded. That's next to the open, cleared area that has the existing skiing. And what Granite Backcountry does is blade skiing, backcountry skiing, also called, confuse you a little more, tree skiing. So we hire, this is all on our dime, we go around from community to community to help facilitate this construction. So we hire a blade designer. Here in Littleton, Blake Roberts, who's done the Parker Mountain Trails. So we like to work with our local businesses. And so we're adding a new dimension to his practice. So not only is he a mountain bike trail builder, but also a blade designer. And so what that means is utilizing forestry management techniques. We thin the forest, which the trees are 3 inches of diameter at breast height or less. We will thin those to make a skiable, navigable area so that you can ski between the trees. It's a very common type of trail that you'll see at any of the major resorts. Again, the difference here is that there's a big movement for people to do backcountry skiing. So this would work in combination with the ski tower. And so what it does is, I always like to tell people, it's like going to the beach with my family, my wife. She likes to sit and lay on the beach with get the sun, read a book. The kids like to play around in the sand. Dad likes to go out and surf. So, this here, used to Ski Hill, you have that opportunity now. You have facilities at the bottom, there's rail slides, they have the ski tow, you have open skiing, people can learn how to ski. And now adding blades, it adds a whole new dynamic to the skiing. So, that's what the proposal is on the second half, is to approve the MOU that we've drafted between the town, Granite Backcountry, and Mount Eustis Ski Hill. All costs, for that blade design, as I mentioned, are absorbed by Granite Backcountry. We would have a blade day. We have a small army, I like to say, of volunteers that are from across New Hampshire, Maine, and New England, and beyond. In fact, the blade day, if approved, we would have a blade day scheduled here, and we currently have 67 people from across New England signed up to come here. So what that really tells me, and I'd like to convey this point to you, is that this is an economic driver. This is a part of an economic development strategy, and it works with your existing resources and infrastructure. So it's an exciting project. In fact, I was up there on top of Mount Eustis about an hour ago, maybe a little more than that ago. And just looking down, seeing the town of Littleton, and I'm like, wow, like I said, we have 11 or 12 other glades, and most of them are like deep into the forest, and this is just a really cool opportunity to have a beautiful town nestled right there at the bottom. And that's a unique opportunity for something here. You already have it, so it's like adding to it, but it's an exciting thing for people to come and visit, and they say, I want to ski Mount Eustis, I want to see that town down there. And I think there's a great opportunity to take advantage of that. So with that said, I also want to touch on something that will probably come up in a question is, well, what about liability? So I'd like to address that as well. So for this small army that I suggested we come to town and help cut, many hands make light work. And we would do this in one day. We have insurance, and we provided as part of the packet additional insurance certificate covering the town as well as Mount Eustis Ski Hill. So in the event that there are any accidents, we have a 0% accident record, not only for blading, but also in our 5 years as having these properties. 0 reported accidents. So that would be covered by insurance. Mount Eustis also has a insurance certificate, and you already named on it. It's a local realtor. I'm not sure the name, but it's in effect currently. So that covers the skiing during the in-season operations of Mount Eustis Ski Hill per the term of the lease. So there's also the landowner recreation indemnification statute, commonly known as the Rec Act, that indemnifying the town as the landowner. Also, per the terms of the lease agreement, there's indemnifications from Granite Backcountry and Mount Eustis Ski Hill. So we've done the best that we possibly could as two nonprofit organizations to collaborate and work with the town. And we would love to see an approved vote for this to go on. And we could develop this so it would be ready for this winter. So thank you for the time. And Kate, I don't know if you wanted to add a few things to that.
No, just that I'm the new president of Mount Eustis. I took over for Dave Harkless, and we have a relatively new board. So that's why there's a lot of new faces here for us. And, we're just really hoping that to continue the momentum from last year's season and drive more people here and teach more young families how to ski and bring more people to the community.
I learned to ski on Mount Eustis. So.
There you go.
A gazillion.
So just one thing too, we just got word from Primex, they had just reviewed it, they did find a few concerns that need to be addressed, so this may be an open discussion, I probably won't be able to approve today, but I just wanted to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. But we've got some hands up. Okay.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm the president of the Snowmobile Club in Littleton, New Hampshire. So currently we have an active snowmobile trail that goes up over Mount Eustis, PT 104. I do believe, I haven't seen the actual previous lease, but I do believe there's some terminology in the lease about maintaining that trail, and it would be in the section that's proposed by them. We go along, if you're looking at the mountain right on the left-hand side of the ski hill, there's an orange fence that's normally put up and down the side of that. I would have safety concerns about people with blade skiing across an active snowmobile trail. It is a primary state trail that the state has put in a significant amount of funding into for bridge building historically. Matter of fact, I do believe, and I don't know if, I wish a couple other people here that knew some of the history about it, but I do believe the Snowmobile Club is the people that cleared the upper section of that mountain historically. So it did have a lot more trees up there. I do believe that came from the Snowmobile Club's funds to clear that. And if they would add that, it would basically remove North Country's connection to Littleton for the snowmobile season.
So it sounds like we got just a little bit more,
So my understanding is that I don't know the particulars, and someone else may have, my understanding is that was moved or something of that nature.
Trail is temporarily, we have a landowner issue because of a previous ATV concern on a different section of that trail that is currently being worked through. There's also some additional logging that's happening in the Bethlehem side of that trail this season. But the trail still stands, and it still is, we're hoping we can get through this landowner concern. And I know the board, the selectmen have been very much involved in that history last year. We're still kind of challenged with some of those pieces. I do think that we will have some progress forward. However, it takes time, just like anything else. We had some previous allowances that basically shut down the snowmobile trail. So I'm hoping that by doing this, we're not abandoning what the club's done and basically stopping our ability from having recreation connected to Twin Mountain from Littleton, New Hampshire.
so Jim and then Tony will,
Yeah. Normally, this would not be on an agenda because quite honestly, it's not wrapped up and it's done. Time was of the essence for these folks involving some work in October. So I said that because I was going to be gone, that you could put it on the agenda, but it would be subject to. And the subject to is sign off by the town attorney and Primex. And the email I got today on the 27th, there are issues still in reference to the liability. I wasn't aware at all on the snowmobile trails, so that may be another. But so even if you were to vote a conditional use, it would have to be subject to Primex and our town attorney saying that this document is 100% protecting the town from any liability. And right now, there's just some issues, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Laura because the email was in my box when I got back today.
But this is a good idea. I mean, obviously, they've run into some issues here, and there may need to be some adjusting on both sides in terms of thinking it through, but I think it's a good idea. I don't know if we need a consensus sense here as to whether this should go forward, because it can't go forward as it is. I do want to tell you that you use the word lessor, and then you use Littleton as a town name, and then you use the town as a town name for the lessor. So I was fine with all of this, but you're not consistent with the lessor. Either it's the Board of Selectmen, or it's the town, or it's Littleton as a municipality, but you use all three interchangeably in this document and in this document.
I think what we do is we use, so the town of Littleton would be the lessor, and that would be the proper party.
Right.
And that's how we draft, that's how those leases and MOUs are drafted.
And that's when I caught D here under the memorandum, it said the Littleton Board of Selectmen approved that certain one-year lease agreement between itself as lessor. So there you connected the Board of Selectmen directly to the lessor. But in other state, and this is just,
It's a drafting thing,
it's a
yeah,
context,
but, I mean, it would be, the Board of Selectmen would be the town, because they have to approve on behalf of the town, so I think
it should always be then the lessor as defined as the Board of Selectmen, because at points you make it the municipality, and I know you're talking about the Board of Selectmen, and then you make the reference to the town, not naming Littleton per se, and that's still the lessor. So just a consistency thing throughout the two documents, so they all say the same thing, that it's the Board of Selectmen as lessor right in the beginning, and then make sure it just stays that way all the way through. And it may be fine for an attorney to say, yeah, it doesn't really matter, you're just making noise here. So I may just be making noise,
yeah, well,
but when I read it,
I drafted those, and I'll look at those, happy to change those. It's not, that doesn't sound like a big deal to me. And it just, separate from the snowmobile issue, as far as the liability goes, Jim is correct, and that's how the message was conveyed. My thought was that we would suggest that the board could approve, again, separate from this issue, this is sort of new to me, the board could approve the MOU and the lease. He's already said subject to the approval of the town's attorney and Primex, and they have maybe some, I don't know what their issues are, but you could approve it conditional to that and allowing Jim to sign off on that when it's appropriate. That would be my suggestion. The reason I say that, and again, separate from this issue, is that we did, and this is not to be hasty, but we did plan to do this on October 2nd, which is Saturday, which is all of a sudden, this came up really fast, and due to scheduling and so forth, that's why we're here, it was delayed. In the event that we can't do it, you don't meet again until, I believe, the 25th, and then it's out for this season, and next year we have a stacked schedule, so it probably doesn't happen. And that's not to put pressure on the Board of Selectmen at any, it's just a reality. So I wanted to provide that context, given the fact that, you know, this is a wonderful resource, and Granite Backcountry, really what we bring to the table, not just our skill set in helping design these glades, but we're a 1,000+ member organization. You know, we really have people looking to go places to go skiing because they don't want to go to the resorts, they're too expensive. They're looking for fitness, they're looking for adventure. The equipment is amazing these days, and so, you know, we're putting Littleton on the map in our network, and so there's a marketing component to that, which equates to economic development. So just wanted to make sure that that was conveyed and understood. And so that would be my suggestion on how to go forward in that regard. This other issue, I don't know, but.
Tony, you had,
Yeah, chairman of the planning board. So start off by saying, I think I've walked up that hill more than anyone in this room. I was part of the original crew that snowmobile people up Mount Eustis when we didn't have a road, so I love it. I'm also a snowmobiler. I'm also one of the landowners, one of the families who's blocking the trail at the moment. I don't see that in the near future. My concern would be the snowmobile trail where it is now. If there could be an easement for at some point, if it's not blocked, or with the login on top of Mount Eustis, if there's a way around said piece of property, I'd hate for them to lose that because that's a very important corridor from east to west that connects Lisbon and Twin Mountain. And you only have to go down the industrial park road and see all the snowmobiles. So there's a lot of economy coming into town. The other question I would have is, great cutting woods, but is there a hydrology plan? Because I also drive up that road every day. And my concern would be the runoff. So if you just start cutting trees without a plan or a study.
Well,
So I think,
yep,
great idea, love to see it, because I drive by that every day. And there's many a Saturday and Sunday I don't see the parking lot full. I would love to see that parking lot full. But I think you need to go through a process and make sure that all the ducks are lined up, including hydrology, including the local snowmobile club, even though that trail is active, well, not active, or active, but barred at the moment for a short period of time, or however, they might find a way to work. I hate to lose that opportunity, because where they put that trail was probably the last place we could.
So originally, I believe the trail actually went down the opposite side of the ski hill. And from what I was told from previous administrations, it was in the original lease for Mount Eustis and Parks and Rec that the snowmobile club would have access to that throughout.
I have that lease right here.
Okay, I'm not sure, I haven't seen it myself,
So-
but I don't know if there's any verbiage in there.
Facing the mountain, it was always on the left-hand side. There was talk about it having coming down the right-hand side at one point.
Yeah,
When
yes.
they were putting all this in. So that'd be my only suggestion, is, I know October 2nd is right down the thing here, but you might want to either speed up your process real quick, or be realistic about the time. Because there's a lot of factors in this.
One of the concerns I have is you're talking about backcountry skiing between the trees, but you talk about your paths being 30 to 70 feet wide. Those are trails.
They would technically be called dispersed trails. There actually is no terminology for glade trails. So we work with 5 different landowners from the White Mountain National Forest, the state of New Hampshire, municipalities including Lancaster, Randolph, Bartlett, Gorham, and including municipalities in Maine, also land trusts, several land trusts, and private owners. And it depends on the topography of the land and, you know, what is in the way. Sometimes you have trees that are very large, very close together. The width needs to be larger. Sometimes there's islands in between them. So we work with foresters, biologists, and so forth, you know, especially to comment on the hydrology comment. What we do is when we thin out the trees, we're thinning out so it's navigable between the trees. We lay the slash down to mitigate soil erosion and also to maintain wildlife and habitat. We work with, you know, again, someone like the White Mountain National Forest, which is the name of their work with the National Forest. We talk about red tape, you know, that, there's some rules in there. So we put a lot of effort into having sustainable, wildlife-friendly glade zones. They're thin, 30 feet to 70 feet. Again, depends on how it's designed. There's also other design methods called braided methods, where you have like small little islands. And again, that's for wildlife to believe that it's, you know, that there isn't a change. What we're talking about is thinning like the willy wax, right? So you don't have to ski with like a hockey mask. And it may not be the way that you're used to skiing or you've seen skiing, but it's the way people ski now. And so what we're looking to do is modernize the Mount Eustis Ski Hill and, you know, provide, you know, these new skiing behavioral patterns and bring it to Littleton.
No, I understand what you're doing, and it sounds like it's good, but there's a couple obstacles that we gotta get through before we can make a decision on this as far as I'm concerned, but,
Can I just ask one question on behalf of the board? Is it my understanding, and while I realize that Primex is the insurance carrier, it is my understanding that the state of New Hampshire, given having worked in state government for a number of years and having a husband who's also an attorney and works in zoning and various other state issues, the state of New Hampshire retains, and New Hampshire is very unique in this way, a specific RSA focused on release of liability for anyone undertaking the act of skiing, whether they've signed the liability release or not. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
as long as you don't pay to play.
Right, but like whether you are free skiing, whether you are tree skiing, or whether you are signing the release, upon purchasing a ticket, you inherently take onerous upon yourself for skiing.
Yeah.
And our New Hampshire, and that has been challenged, I know for a fact, because my husband and I have discussed this very many times, that has been challenged in court under liability reasons, and it always fails against New Hampshire State RSA because it's designed specific to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really dates back to hunting and fishing and encouraging those sports, hook and bullet crowd, and is now applied to, you know, anyone that's recreating unless there's no trespassing signs in specified ways.
Okay.
So there's, yeah, so in this regard, there's multiple layers of risk mitigation. The best that 2 nonprofits could ever do, we have it. Plus the state statute, and you know, if that's not good enough, then we move our project at a different place. So that's just the reality, and you know, at some level, I always like to say that, well, there is some cost of doing business. You know, I don't know if you have these types of agreements on every recreational amenity in town. I doubt it. But, you know, it is what it is, and I think you've had, you know, the other thing I want to acknowledge here is that you've had a long time of existing use for the ski hill. These areas they are partially cut or they are partially cleared. So people are skiing in the woods currently. The difference is that we would like to clean that up and manage it so it's actually safer and cleaner and a better experience for when people come to ski it, whether you're local or from away. So, you know, that's something I just want to make sure that, that you understand that these, I was just up there and you know, that you can see the different paths and they just fill in as you get a little bit lower.
Zach, I don't think you have to sell us on that. I think we like the idea, we like the concept, we like the idea of people coming in, having that type of experience, but we were unaware that a major corridor goes through it. So that I think that did send up, like, we had better check that first. Maybe we could have it resolved tomorrow or the next day. It could be a very easy fix, but I think that is something serious that we have to consider. The other thing is, do we have to, if we're changing the use of the land in a sense, do we have to give notice to the abutters?
Well, we have on certain, I'm just not sure if this, maybe it does require.
Planning board, I don't think it changed the intent, it's a ski hill.
Okay.
Skiing is skiing.
All right.
Right.
Yeah,
So, I
Okay.
mean, if you wanna go with 1 ski, 2 skis, 3 skis,
Yeah.
backwards,
Yeah.
ski.
recreation, so it's
Yeah, okay, all right.
the historical issue here, which none of us are responsible for or guilty of, is that snow trails and snowmobiles is a major policy split in every community. You have people that are absolutely against it, and you have people who are absolutely for it. And so this isn't just a contingency that needs to be fixed. This is a big issue. I mean, this fellow brought a big issue to us here. And I would like to see both on that hill. I mean, I clearly think there's a way to blend this in a way that you can get that. But we're talking about a very controversial subject here, which is that type of recreation has tons of supporters, and it also has some tons of people that are just go crazy when they see these machines. So this is kind of a serious thing.
So I would just say to that, if you wouldn't mind, I think the reason we dove into this project, and shame on me and shame on us for not looking deeper into it, that was our understanding that became an abandoned trail.
Right.
And so that's what we invested our time and resources in developing this
Right.
plan and project. So that was the premise. So I just want to be that clear. Now, that doesn't change the fact that they may or may not still have rights to, frankly, I have no idea what's going on with that trail and who owns it. And I don't know if you have agreements with the snowmobile club, or they provide insurance to you, or how it works. Certainly, I'm well aware of user conflict in this space. I also represent Granite Outdoor Alliance, which is an outdoor trade group, and that is one of our initiatives, is to reduce user conflict. I think, if there was an opportunity to either move the trail, we would help cut it, we would work together collaboratively, or keep your trail and blade around it, whatever. There's probably a good way to figure it out.
Just being honest, the big challenge with Mount Eustis is it's a very steep hill, and we have a pretty significant groomer that goes up over it. And I can tell you, it has been discussed historically to move the trail. I know that at one point where you're suggesting the Glades be, they wanted to put us there, and that's way too steep. We could not possibly go down that. Really, the only spot is where we're currently at, or in a real ideal is smack dab in the middle of that mountain. Going down the middle is great, but we understand and we want to, still support the skiing area. Additionally, again, if you have snowmobiles who travel 45 miles an hour coming through there, I wouldn't want to accidentally take out someone that is coming through there. I wouldn't want to put any liability.
Sure.
Now, we have our own liability, obviously, it gets, shared by the state and everything. But again, it's tough, coming up around, once we get to the bottom, then where do we go from there, connecting back to our trail? We have to go back across kind of that property, and that's not really an ideal scenario. And it's been looked at quite a few times. It's been a highly controversial thing in the past. I know there's some people in town that are pretty wound up about Mount Eustis. Not me per se, I know there's a lot of snowmobilers that are pretty wound up about Mount Eustis. So.
That were, that providing skiing?
I guess, way before
For the
me,
community.
historically it was, the money was basically provided by Snowmobile Club to kind of redo a lot of things, and then we kind of got shoved off to the side and got this crappy path looking at the mountain left-hand side of the hill. I know there was some dispute about that historically, nothing that I was involved with, but I do know it was some conversation. Brian would know a lot more about it. He was the one that was highly involved in that
Yeah, it
at
was
the time.
Brian Hadlock, I think, was down probably the mid-90s.
Yes,
Mm.
and Brian,
96 or so.
I think at the last rail trail meeting, Brian pulled me to the side and he started sputtering about Mount Eustis even at that one. So there's still some, and that was even beside this, that was a whole piece, and I was
Well, he
like,
runs our insurance.
and I kind of shook my head up and down and said, okay, I'm not sure, or whatever. I was like, we still have the trail, we still are trying to work to get access around that, and hopefully someday, soon, that we will be able to do that. I absolutely do, it won't happen this season, but that's actually beyond even the landowner conflict. There's some logging that's happening on the other side of that, but this is a project that was put in place. That, you know, hundreds of landowners that came on board. You know, I think there was hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in this trail at one point in time from the state funding piece to get from Bethlehem all the way to Littleton. Back when Brian was kind of taking care of that, and now we're in this gray area, and we did have a landowner dispute, and I do hope that someday we'll be able to accommodate that landowner and still be able to upload that mountain.
So what do we,
Can I just bring up, so Tyler, I'm wondering if you can speak to whether or not the uphill access can be kind of like off the snowmobile, like is there a way for when, because we're still in plan development, is there a way for us to make sure uphill travel is within a certain buffering zone of the snowmobile trail should they regain their access? That
Yeah,
might allow us
absolutely. I
to
mean,
move forward.
it's all a management thing, so we can put that uphill anywhere. We can put it way Looker's right.
That's where a lot of people go right
And that's
now.
probably where they go now. That makes most sense of how it would all work. It's in the Glade plan, so I'm not looking at it right now, but the answer to the question, we could avoid the conflict. So it's gonna be
If you know
advantageous
where
here.
the snow fence
Yeah.
is, we're right along that snow
They're right
fence is
there.
where we go
Yeah,
down.
and
So,
most uphill travel right now, even when we're open, is by Looker's right of the mountain. They go up towards the shed at the top and then
And
cross over.
we loop around at the top up there. And,
Yeah.
you know, obviously that's not a huge deal. We can, you know.
Yeah,
work
I mean,
on it.
there's with signage and
Yeah.
stuff too. I mean,
Yeah,
we could all be friendly and work together.
Can take care of it. Because the glades don't have to interfere with the trail at all. They're gonna be on the other side of the snowmobile.
I just don't want people going across the snowmobile trail because
Right.
that mountain, I know for experience, you know, you can go down 2 mile an hour and it's icy.
Yeah,
You walk,
especially
and
right
you
there.
basically, you
Yeah.
have no control stopping
Yeah.
until you're at the bottom of the
No,
mountain. So
yeah, I mean, we've heard snowmobilers come up and down there and it's
Yep.
a sketchy area. It's super
It's
slippery.
icy. I mean, it's an icy hill, so.
so,
And so people are skiing it in the past in the woods,
Yeah,
even
over.
over further. Meanwhile, snowmobiles have still gone, so it's actually sort of been existing use on both sides with no user conflict. It's been, I mean, it hasn't been managed, but in and of itself, it's been two user groups working
I'm happy
together.
to provide the GPS coordinates of exactly where the trail lies.
I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, just making me think about other things like sled skiing. I go sled skiing, you put your skis on your back, get on board, you get on it, snowmobile, and zip out there, and yeah, that's a great thing, it's cool. I'm not saying
I think we need to
that's what we propose here,
do some
but
more
it
research on
could be
this.
part of this grand master
Table.
plan, but at any rate, it's a opportunity to demonstrate two user groups working collaboratively, and I don't know if that gets us through today's session or not, but certainly, with my background, this is something that I'm into, being a showcase area that has collaboration between motorized and non-motorized. So I don't want to take up more airtime than necessary, but that could be a resolution, is that we quarantine off that area. We have adequate signage, which is part of the MOU now, and the existing plan can still be voted on by the board.
so that's one issue, but the other two, was it Primex
insurance.
and
And the attorney.
To
and
attorney
the
review.
attorney? But that we could clear up tomorrow, possibly, right? I mean, I would think that'd be,
A suggestion would be that you could authorize Jim to, because basically, we've worked with the attorney, I haven't talked with Primex, but with Jim and Caitlin, and so with the attorney's comments, we could review them, and as long as, if you authorize Jim to accept the attorney's comments, then we could sign on to that. So we'd be, I think, willing to do that.
So you want to start this project on Saturday?
Yeah, so it seems very hastened that we've been working on this for several months, but some new information came to light suddenly, including the lease agreement, and so that's why we're all of a sudden here today, so apologize for the jam session, but sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles.
I still have one
Tony?
more question. As a citizen and a taxpayer, when we started talking about Mount Eustace many, many years ago, my concern then, and it still is today, it's by donation only still, and will that remain the same?
No.
What? So that's important for everyone to know. Because right now, the way I see it is, I don't have to go up to Granite Park and make a donation to play there. Mount Eustace is a park in the town of Littleton. I shouldn't have to pay to go there if I want to play. And right now, the agreement was, or what they worked out was, donation, which is great, because I've been there, I've seen the kids donate, and whatever you can afford, great community, great fundraising, all that, got it. My concern is, we shouldn't be, it should still be donation only, correct? I wanna make it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
moving forward,
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure you guys say that.
Oh, yeah.
That's not, so
I
we're
can tell
only
you
on the
this is gonna
development
be
side,
answered by
not on the
Friday.
operational side.
No,
Okay,
it's
so
staying,
I
it's
think
staying
it's
as,
important that people
yeah.
hear that.
No, no, it's
And
staying
it
as
was just
donation
brought
only.
too soon.
And if you don't wanna
and my gut
donate, you
didn't
don't have
even
the money,
want
we're not
this.
gonna turn you away.
Just
But
wanna
you
make sure
have
everyone's
to, we
aware.
have to keep an operation going, and so that system has worked historically. in
Yes,
town.
you guys have a great, they have a great
Yeah, we
track
have-
record for fundraising, donations. You get, I just, again,
Yeah,
wanna
no,
make sure
and
people are
we're, you
aware.
know, we haven't even raised the price.
You know, for the sake of time too, I mean, that's something that can be worked out later on, but good point,
No, yeah,
Tony.
we'll
It's-
stay donation only.
So, I'm not sure we can have this clarified by Friday. We have to take care of, as Zach brought out, as far as the snowmobile issue. Sounds like it could be resolved, but we also have the insurance issue, the attorney. Could it happen by Friday? Possibly.
I mean, I think there are minor, in my opinion, there are minor points from the attorney, and we caught her on coming today back from vacation, and so that may have impacted her ability to actually make changes, but she did identify what this change would be, and I think Mount Eustace Ski Hill would be fine with accepting her changes, as well as Granite Backcountry, because I don't think they were of a material nature that would preclude going forward with this project, which I think, although maybe not everyone's a skier in town, I bet you'd see a lot more skis on the roofs coming through.
And I agree with you, Taylor. I mean, we love the concept, we love the idea, but we live here.
I think,
Yeah, but no,
We
I
live
understand.
here, and we want to make sure what is best, not just for the skiers, but for everyone concerned. That's our
I understood.
position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should also, sorry,
Go ahead,
be
go ahead.
stressed that there's already trails that are there.
Mm-hmm.
They're already on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of cleaning them up.
Making them safe.
And it makes them safer.
Yeah, it's barely
But-
any cutting.
But do those trails intersect the snowmobile
That would be
trail?
my question. is,
Okay.
Does fishing game, have we had any safety studies around skiers going across an active snowmobile trail?
We work with fishing game,
Okay,
yeah,
so-
absolutely.
So I can call Chris McKee and ask him, does he see any issues with glade skiers going across an active snowmobile trail on top of Mount Eustace? And you say probably no, right? And now and then the other side is if the town does decide to sign an agreement with them, I would ask that somewhere in that agreement it states that the snowmobile club could still have a trail go through there. They're like a stipulation, because while I trust you guys and you seem like all great people, I don't trust that someday someone won't try to take the trail away again and we'll be back in the same boat. And I would just like something in there stating, hey, we'll work with the snowmobile club to have a safe route down the ski hill, and that's really all we're asking for is a safe route, and to prevent any accidents, obviously, between
Absolutely.
skiers and snowmobiles.
I think the
Come on, Tony.
Granite Backcountry would have no problem entering into a collaborative provision detailing, mentioning the prior use and the hope for future use. I think that, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I'd say I'm sure that they would agree that it's already been that way. so it's no
We've
different to
actually
them.
made signage already, and put signage up.
Yeah, I mean, we sign our stuff as well, but, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I think it's a cool example of user groups working together, frankly.
Tony?
Yeah, I think we can solve this very easily. You guys are working on the process behind the scenes. It's a park and rec property. Park and rec has the ability to maintain that property. Don't they have the right to cut trees down if they
It
want?
is a
mow the lawns?
town-owned property, and Mount Eustace leases it.
So the selectmen could give the ability to the park and rec commissioners.
Yeah, we can also have a special meeting. What do we need, 48 hours to post a meeting? And I'm not comfortable making a motion to approve this tonight. There are three contingencies out there. The big one is a historical recreation concern from the snowmobilers. And the wording has to be very clear here. And again, we've got the lesser referred to in different contexts, in different names. So there needs to be a very clear contract where we can all understand how the two trails are going to interact with each, or how the two systems of recreation are going to interact with each other. We can call a special meeting before the next meeting and approve this.
They're looking at October 2nd though, Mill, like this Saturday to start. And they've got you got a team of what, 60?
67.
Yeah.
67.
This is no one's fault that we have a trail that's currently closed, but not because it's supposed to be
Right.
closed, but because it is closed. And they didn't realize
Well,
it,
let's
so
see,
it's not their issue.
another suggestion would be, if the Littleton Snowmobile Club, excuse me if that's the wrong name, if the leadership there would be willing to enter into a collaboration provision, for, with further assurances and cooperation clause, and Mount Eustace Ski Hill is willing to do that, Granite Backcountry is willing to do that, and the town, whether it's through the Board of Selectmen or you delegate that authority to Jim or Caitlin, Parks and Rec, I think it is a solvable problem, and if you wanted to meet on, say, Thursday, so there's 48 ample notice period, I'd be happy to do that, for a Zoom meeting if possible, but I think that seems like a reasonable solution.
If you can get that kind of wording down where we can approve it, yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, and the other thing is that these agreements have been reviewed by town council, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
So we could have Lori either on the call or just have her review that prior to the call.
Yeah, and again, where you talk about the lessor being the Board of Selectmen, and number 6.
We'll look at that, I think we would suggest Lori could look at that. 'Cause
Yeah.
perhaps it's a typo, I'm not sure what I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Obligations of Littleton. But on the page before, it's obligations of the lessor.
Alright, so it's a swap out of
Right,
one
it's
word.
just a
Right,
terminology
fine, yeah,
stuff,
done.
that's what it is.
Would you guys be able to join in on?
yeah, Thursday I'm available, Wednesday I'm available, so.
I can't guarantee.
And I think what I'm hearing
I
is
can't
that,
obligate Laurel. I mean, you could set that up tentative, but unless Laura is ready or is available, I mean, I can't, she has her schedule.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, I'm not trying to throw water on anything, but I can't guarantee the attorney can be ready by Thursday.
yeah, I understand, I'm feeling that she would make herself
What is
available, not
October
speaking for her,
2nd?
but.
Saturday,
This coming Saturday?
yes.
Oh, wow.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding, I apologize, I had to step out of the room for a phone call. So what they're asking for is a motion to conditionally approve the MOU so that they can have a work day on Saturday with volunteers who are going to clear out trees of a diameter of 3 inches or less. And is there any grinding of root areas, or is it just cutting the stems?
Cut it flat, flush to the ground.
Okay, so I just wanted to get an understanding of that's what we're voting on right now. A conditional approval so that they can have volunteers to cut trees that are less than 3 inches in diameter.
There was one item, and then the second item was also,
Extension of lease, 1 year.
lease extension.
Oh, yes, thank
As
you.
well, for the mountain, because we're currently without a lease agreement with the town.
So I think that the foresters or whoever that are looking at this project need to give us information on water runoff and everything like that before it gets started. We need to know what's going on.
What would you say if, by comparative study, we have arrangements with Lancaster, with Randolph,
They
with
don't own
Gorham?
the hill Mount Eustace.
It isn't
That
Mount
road
Eustace.
But it's a,
The
so it's
drainage
a,
on Mount Eustace,
well, look
they're
at that.
constantly working on the drainage of the road. Okay, so that road is caving in some areas.
I mean, do they do, when they approved the lease agreement with Mount Eustace, did
Well,
they
but
do a
you're-
hydrology study? Because
No, I'm
that's an
saying-
open field.
I'm just saying what we're asking for, I think what Roger's asking for is we want to make sure. Because we spend a lot of money on Mount Eustace and that road is deteriorated.
It's not near the road though.
I think
But
the
you will,
misunderstanding,
you need the hydrology study, I know right what you're talking about. Okay, and if you look at the ditches on the
I would
side of
say,
Mount
I mean,
Eustace,
okay.
It's
and
not,
the side of Mount Eustace, that road, the tar is constantly crumbling.
it's not
Well,
near
we're
the
not,
road.
we're not.
I know where you're talking.
So,
But still, you get the whole side of that mountain, it will be affected.
I might
So we just want
clarify.
assurance that it's not gonna,
Yeah.
that's all
Yeah.
we're looking for.
So
Right,
I might
Roger?
just clarify, Tony, that
Yeah.
that Blade
And I get
Cutting
this,
is
they're
not,
trying to
we're not
save money
disturbing
and
the root
he's doing it.
structure.
Yeah.
It's breaking down small, essentially.
And you're laying the slash back down,
Yep.
and
She
for
already said
We just-
nutrient infusion as well as soil,
Yep,
and
I
erosion
understand how it
mitigation.
works. I understand how it works.
It's
So
not
to
the
ask,
side.
and to ask, you know, for like, for other projects, you know, around it, I'm not discrediting that request, but I, you know, for two nonprofits to perform a hydrology study on a recreational use that just requires snow, it seems unnecessary and perhaps unreasonable.
It's not
Can I bring up a
disturbing the
point?
topology.
Does it have to be done this year? Is
Well,
it
it's-
something
we
that,
have, we have projects, next year that we're,
Okay.
it's like hiring a contractor or something, you know, we're stacked, and,
Taylor, I think we're just feeling really pressured.
Short notice.
Not that we don't go along with it. I think it's an awesome, awesome idea. But giving the mix of having, we want to make sure that insurance-wise we're okay, that our attorney looks over the necessary paperwork. I'm just feeling, I love the idea, I love the concept, I love what you're wanting to do. If there was any way we could plan to have all of these other aspects taken care of and then shoot for next year.
I mean, I think we could easily arrange this for a Thursday session, to be quite frank, and closings on deals like this is, you know, not very complicated, but if we couldn't reach an agreement on Thursday, then I would throw the white towel and say, agreed, but I feel like we're at the 1 yard line, and it would be to the benefit of the town, including, most particularly as residents, and my suggestion would be to try to push forward and go to 4th of 1, to get across the finish line would be my suggestion, we're so close. And if we have a meeting and it's revealed that it's not, we're actually far apart, then we stop.
So we're looking for a hydrology study, or based on the concerns that
That
are
I
raised?
didn't raise, I'm not sure anyone raised that issue except for the gentleman in the back, so I'm not,
Okay.
I've never done, we've done over a dozen of these,
Right.
and it's never been a requirement, and that includes the White Mountain National Forest.
So are we looking for a tentative plan between you and the snow
It's in
club?
front of you, you have a map, you have a written description, a map description.
No, I've read all that. I'm talking about the concerns that are being voiced by the snowmobile club in terms of,
So what we'll do is we would talk between now and if we set up a meeting on Thursday,
right,
talk with 2 reasonable groups, 3 reasonable groups, however many, 4 reasonable groups, whatever it is, and add it in there. If we need to quarantine that little section and not touch it, or, you know, I just think that it's something that we can handle. We're all adults.
mhm.
And this is how we move things forward. You know, this is recreation bringing to town, which is a proven driver here in Littleton and other communities. I think it's just something that we're not trying to go to 5th gear without reasonable precautions. We've laid everything out. We've been very calculated.
Yeah.
And
It's well written. I mean, it lays it out very clearly. It would be good to see Lancaster's hydrology plan. I would,
well, we don't do that. It's sort of an
well,
absurdity.
what were you
we're talking
referring
about.
to in terms
Do
of,
they do that with hiking trails?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think they do, and Frank, mountain bike trails, no,
Okay.
they just don't do that. That's like when you're building a road, you would do that.
so you've not done hydrologies?
No, that's
At all,
not
okay, then I
part
was
of the
misunderstanding
equation.
something.
Absolutely not, and
Okay.
that would be financially prohibitive, I would imagine.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that they also have like successful partnerships with Franconia, Cool, Jericho, Mount Prospects,
Right.
Lancaster area, Crescent Ridge. You know, they're very successful, they're great community partnerships, and there's been no adverse effect, environmental effect to those areas.
Right.
And they're they've been well established.
Did you come to those communities with less than a week's notice?
We came to this community quite a while ago. We just happened to be here because of lease arrangements that came up and new information that has arisen. So, you know,
I
that's,
think that's us, right? Like, we had a lot of board changes, and he had come in, so that's less on him, and I
And
think.
we were just made aware that our lease was no longer active, and that was, the prior board members didn't tell me that.
so, you know, a lot of what, sorry to interrupt, but a lot of what this is very much an above board action by Mount East Ski Hill, Granite Backcountry. We're coming to, you know, we're seeing issues that came up, we have to address them. Here we are, and, you know, we're asking for, calculated review. This doesn't, something that we're talking about does not seem to me to be something that should take 6 months. This is like a conversation, following this meeting offline. I think if there's a meeting of the minds, wonderful. If there's not, we step back and everyone goes back to their regular lives. So I don't think we're asking for a whole lot, frankly, and I think it's worth pushing forward just a hair more.
We post tomorrow, can we meet on Thursday?
Would
We
that
post
give us
tomorrow?
enough time
Yeah,
though
but
to
the
get
thing is, if the lawyer's not ready and doesn't
I know.
communicate back with us, then we're still in the same
And we
boat
can't
we're at right
obligate
now.
her.
And that's fine, we'll take that risk, no problem. I have a very big feeling that, you know, as a professional, she'll rise to the challenge, and if she doesn't, then we don't.
If they could come to agreement, the two different recreational, that by itself is a valuable
It's huge.
component going forward,
Mhm.
so.
And we would need that, ASAP.
Mhm.
That's fine, we could.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not being the bad guy here, but I mean, it's just,
Oh, I
you
know.
know,
The greatest
to-
concern of Snowmobile Club is we'll want something like in, like the contract or writing or somewhere that I can come back and 5 years from now go, see right here, see what you said? We wanna be able to come back to that and say, hey, you're gonna keep that trail open and work with us. I mean, I trust that you guys have the intent to do that, but I want something.
So there's a part of me too, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, that there's already trails there. So you're gonna go there Saturday, you're gonna cut the little ones down.
Make it safer.
What harm is that gonna do? So that'll just open up the trails, and then if we have to nix-nay the whole thing, at least there's wider trails.
And they're safer.
And they're safer.
And
they're being
it's,
accessed
they
by
were
all.
using them for years without a lot of people even knowing that they're there with the snowmobile trail running. It's just making them safer. so
But
that
would
people-
we,
Marking them
would that,
better.
by doing that, would we be, if it doesn't get, the Pembroke's advocate now, by doing that, would we be encouraging more traffic to go across the potential active snowmobile trail?
And so this
Therefore
is-
increasing
yeah,
the
totally.
potential risk.
I think this is
of
where we have
of
the
that
conversation, because I gotta, when we talk, I gotta look at the map and all that, and if
Yeah.
it doesn't, if it's like, no, time out, we can't do that, there's dangerous, blah, 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 we're reasonable people,
Sure.
we're not gonna jam a recreational project that puts people in harm's way,
Yeah.
but if there's a way that we could cooperate,
I just would
Alright,
want
let's do
safety
it.
to be
Let's do
considered,
it.
Yeah,
obviously,
that's
the
our biggest thing,
viability,
yeah.
the viability of us to be able to maintain our trail,
Yeah.
and then also,
I mean, I still love to have-
and have something in the paperwork somewhere saying that in 5 years we're not gonna lose our trail.
yeah. I mean, I'd
So
love to have
would you
a-
guys feel comfortable doing a motion upon contingencies? And then if we have contingencies and they're not met, then the project's either nix-nayed or put on hold.
well,
Yeah,
let
we
me-
don't even have to say that part, you know, that's an understood. It's a contingency that has to come in support of the motion, in support of the motion.
Well, let me ask, I mean, then, do you even need a motion if the deadline is Thursday?
Well, that's why I was originally
Because,
talking about
because
a
if
consensus.
you're talking about
sense,
trying to
just
get
to-
everybody together and an answer on Thursday, then you
That's
can
right.
make your motion on Thursday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It either happens or it doesn't.
It's not pop out.
Thank you.
Who's that?
I told you 2 minutes ago.
Because right now, I mean, your motion would be subject to town attorney, subject to Primex, subject to accommodation of snowmobile trails, and potentially even hydrology. So, I mean,
Well,
and
that's why I was recommending a consensus.
and I know, but I'm just saying that was raised from planning board, and so it has to be looked at. I can't ignore that. I mean, I've
I'm
got at
sorry,
least.
was he say that statement as planning board or as a resident? I'm just asking for clarification. Did you say
Ma'am,
that statement as planning board or resident?
I'm staying as a planning board.
Okay,
Chairman of
thank
the
you.
planning board.
Thank you, I was
When
just
people-
asking
yeah,
for
yeah.
clarification.
When people come to us, that's one of the questions we ask. It's a standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
If you answer, that's fine. That's all I was asking.
So we've spent a lot of time on
Yeah,
this
and I can say,
tonight.
what I need then is in order for the attorney, is her to look at language between the snowmobiles and them accommodating that hill. I have to check with Joanna at Planning and Zoning. Is there some type of hydrology that people get for tree removal and what have you, which, I mean, I know you don't have a lot of restrictions up here, but you do have some, and I mean, and so we need to verify that. And then there is the issue on liability. And the attorney does acknowledge there's a state law, but even says, in spite of that, I still have concerns, the way the initial liability is written.
That's the case law part of it.
Yeah.
How the courts have actually ruled.
So I mean, again, it's not pro or against, but there are three.
I think her issue is, during the non-operating, the off-season, Mount Eustis should not be liable if the town requests that it's open for, and I quote, bird watching, hiking, and other activities. Mount Eustis is suggesting that they should not be liable during non-operating seasons, which seems like a very fair request. If someone goes up bird watching and slips and falls, well, then you have the rec statute to rely on. I think the town of Littleton needs to take a little bit of ownership here, and like, hey, look, this is a collaborative process. This is how stuff works. Public-private partnerships, that's how the game works. And so we're doing everything possible we can when there's snow on the ground. Now, if they left if they dug a hole for a giant, jump or something, and then that was there in the summer, and someone falls in the hole, okay, that's, how likely that that's their fault. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the town wants to keep the land open to recreationalists in the summertime, and so that should not be on Mount Eustis Ski Hill. Doesn't make any sense. So I think that,
And nothing against you guys, but I have to also be realistic. There's staff time. We start labor negotiations on Thursday. We're wrapping up budget, getting ready for a budget on October 7th. So what I'm saying is that, unless things can be given to us as early tomorrow as possible to get to an attorney, to even see if there can be an answer Thursday night, that to me is the first step. The attorney, based on what's submitted, can tell whether or not, because I don't think she has to even be in a Zoom, just has to say, I'm fine with the document.
Yeah.
It is my understanding that case law usually defaults against, just in my conversations, discussions.
So are we saying then we'll do a Zoom Thursday and we'll see how much information we've gotten and?
And if we can fulfill everything you're asking for, then
Yeah. Yeah, that's why.
Then we could take a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, then it would be,
Yeah.
because it would be advertised as a meeting, so they could vote on Thursday as long as all these pieces fit together.
Right. Okay.
I think we're willing to do what's necessary to make that happen.
Okay, so do we?
At noon.
At noon on Thursday.
You want to meet?
Oh, we can't, we've got negotiations.
I have a meeting from 9 to 12 with, starting the first opening of labor unions.
Yeah.
And they're in this room. And the room, I think,
You
is
are too.
booked after us.
Are you in this?
Yeah, and the room is booked after us.
This Thursday?
Because Vicki booked it for us, so I think they have a meeting in here after.
Can we do it late afternoon then?
Yes.
It would have to be,
Yeah.
Vicky would have to check to see what they have in the afternoon or the evening.
We could also check with the Opera House to see if we could meet there as a possibility.
Actually, we could meet right at the town office.
5 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
And I could let you know.
So my suggestion would be, now Eustace, Granite Backcountry, and Snowmobile Club meet initially in advance of the meeting, to save time. The hydrology issue, you guys can think about that one, or whatever you do, that's not standard procedure for any recreational activity that I've ever been a part of. Primex, well, let me say the lawyer. We have a revision, if you want to need to talk with Lori directly and work out the arrangements, that's what I'm used to in my private practice, and that's fine, I'm happy to do that. You just need to authorize that, because that's gonna be a time expense, an expense for us as well. But I'm happy to do that to speed things along, and then we send it to Primex, and, if they've already gotten back to you, you have a line of contact, and request expedited, response. And I think that we'll see what we get by Thursday, and we would very greatly appreciate all of that. That would be wonderful, just to try to get something done, that would be really cool, and we would appreciate that. And we're hustling on our side, and we apologize for jamming the board, and that was not our intention, but we do see a cool collaborative project. I see a press release with the Snowmobile Club and the Ski Club, and user conflict, overcoming it. There's a lot of good stuff that come out of this, so again, appreciate the time and consideration.
So 5 o'clock Thursday, we will reconnect. Okay.
In person or?
Either or. Yeah, in person, great, if we can make that happen.
So is there an option for Zoom, or will a link be posted?
Well,
We'll have to be.
Yeah.
We need to get somewhere first before we will do that. And also, just to clarify, I mean, so people understand, the town attorney does not sit and work 100% for the town of Littleton. They represent multiple communities.
I'm
And every phone call and email that I make and you make to her, the town of Littleton is paying.
Well, guess what, it works the same way on our end too, so, understood.
All right, good, well, thank you.
Thank
you all, appreciate it. Okay, so moving right along. The next order of business is the Opera House to accept the New Hampshire State, what is it, Community Advance Funds grant in the amount of $4,800. I forget the name, it's New Hampshire.
I just,
Hold on.
NHSCA, New Hampshire State Council of the Arts.
Yeah, New Hampshire State Council of the Arts, okay. So there is $4,800 available, and kudos to Adam for getting that grant. And what he would like to do is next year for the the Friday night art festivals, he wants to use it to pay street musicians. And he feels that by paying street musicians, that there'd be a higher quality of talent on those Friday nights. So the recommendation is to have us agree to accept these funds in a special account for use only by the Littleton Cultural Arts Commission for the purpose of funding First Friday events in 2022, specifically to pay for street musicians.
Madam Chairman, I make the motion to approve.
Okay?
And I'll second it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next order of business is the town tax rate.
Over the years, the request has been to give back all of the money to the taxpayers.
Mhm.
And the town, the state of New Hampshire recommends that we hold, what, 5%?
Actually,
or
isn't it 10%?
I'm sorry,
It's
10%.
actually over $1 million. It's $1,130,000 and some
And
change.
And I think in the past 10 years that I've been involved on whatever level with the Board of Selectmen, we've tried to go halfway there,
Mhm.
and that's kind of where we're at this year. So my sense is not to support this recommendation that we give back more money to the town. It's not a matter of keeping taxpayer money away from taxpayers. It's a matter of operating the municipality and at least anticipating, something happening that would require us to pay for something rather than take a tan out to cover it. I think the state asks for too much.
The state recommendation, minimum recommendation is 5%, 1 million, which for mascot.
Yeah, that's what I thought, it was 5%.
For Littleton, would be 1,130,728. 17 is the max, that would be 3 million. We are currently $525,077, so you only have 2.32% of reserves.
The past doesn't predict the future, obviously, but we've fortunately not faced a problem with that. But sometimes towns do, that's not enough money to hold.
We've had 2 fire trucks fail.
I'm sorry?
We've had 2 fire trucks fail.
Yeah, right.
Wastewater, while it's separate, another million something there. So I mean, I'm just gonna say, it's your guys' call, but the more you take away from the savings.
Is this a decision we have to make tonight, though?
I think they want it as part of the budget process.
Oh, is this part for?
Yes, the board's asking both us and the school board,
Okay.
what are we giving back?
Yeah, I think we haven't always been pressured to do that right away at the early budget season. So I think let's wait and see what the numbers look like.
Our first meeting is the 7th. and
Yeah, let's,
So I'm just gonna tell them there's none right now?
I mean, I don't.
Yeah, we haven't decided if there's any.
I feel like it's too early in the budget season to make that determination.
Because last year we did it after.
Later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was later, after some things settled down. Who specifically was asking for it, Jim?
Diane Cummings.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with your recommendation, Jim, that we not lower it any further. Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of criticism for not having more in that fund.
You mean to leave it at the 1 million? Is that what you're saying?
No, we're only
No,
at
to leave it at the-
500,000.
Oh, okay.
the 2.32%.
I see what you're saying.
Right,
All right.
that's what I would leave it
Okay.
at.
All right.
And no matter what we do, there's criticism. There are different camps on this issue.
So do we have to make a decision or vote?
No, I don't think so.
Nothing to, no. All right, all right.
We just don't have an answer, right?
So the next is the AFSCME negotiating sessions. And then we have to appoint a member of the Board of Selectmen to the town negotiating team, and Milt, you had expressed interest.
I would be willing to do that unless one of you really would like to do that.
You could be the point person. I mean, you feel okay about that, Roger? And then maybe, because I was hoping that you could get some experience on that too. But it's a time commitment. It would mean, out of the garage, like this Thursday, you'd be gone from 9 to 12.
Yeah.
The key people on the negotiating committee is the finance director and the HR director, because that's where most of the issues are. But I've done this 4 or 5 times in the past, and with the school board, 4 or 5 times as well, over all those years, so.
And this year it would involve the Director of Public Works and the Fire Chief because they're departments.
I'm sorry?
And it would involve the Public Works Director and the Fire Chiefs because they're departments
Yeah.
that are up.
What are your thoughts?
I could do it, but if Milton wants to do it.
Me for the negotiating?
Negotiation, yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it. I've done it many times before, and Mike Elwell, I've just known him for many years, so it kind of works. But if you really, you two are elected. I am the appointed selectman here, so theoretically, they probably would like to have an elected person on that committee negotiating, but I don't mind doing it if either one of you would, rather take other responsibilities.
The thing is, if two of us show up for it, then it would have to be
Oh, no,
posted.
you can't,
So
you
it'd have
can't
to
do
be
that,
just
only can have
one.
one. The same thing with the budget committee, if one of us is going to go every time the town is on the agenda, if another one comes, you really have to sit on the other side of the room and leave it separate.
Which
Yeah,
we did last
usually,
year.
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, the three of us went to most of the budget
mean,
meetings last year.
Those can be advertised. I mean, whether you
Yeah, but
speak
there
or
may
not,
be
they can just
more-
be advertised just because of the fact that you're there.
Usually it says more than one
Yeah,
selectman
yeah.
may be at this
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they shouldn't be seen talking.
Not together.
Right.
But-
Many years ago, we had two that were meeting down in behind the furniture place on Meadow
Pilgrim's
Street.
furniture.
And they would meet at times that they thought they were hiding, and the whole town knew about it. So it's better not to even try.
So we do have to appoint,
Milt, I'll take that.
You wanna take the negotiation? Okay.
all right,
That's fine.
so I would entertain a motion.
I would move to appoint Roger Emerson as the negotiator
Okay, all right,
from the board.
all right, and I'll second it.
Okay.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good. All right,
Would you do me one favor on the tax? Go ahead and make a motion to table it.
okay.
Just so somebody comes back and says what happened.
Okay.
So make a
So
motion to table
entertain a
that.
motion to table the tax.
Given that we considered the request, the motion is to table the request.
Okay.
But I'll make a motion to table the request.
Well, I made the motion.
Second,
Okay.
you can second it.
Second, yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good.
I thought you was
Okay,
just doing
and
a
then the
statement.
final point on the agenda tonight is the EMS Public Safety Service in the town of Littleton. So given a little background, we did a pilot program with the EMS program, and it was to last 3 years. And that is coming up it ends August 2022, or July 31st, 2022. So we wanted to get a head start on it to determine whether we continue the pilot program or we say, no, it's not working. So we truly did want to get a jump start. We're not making any decisions tonight other than just discussing some numbers, if there's questions. And that's what we're doing.
Well, in looking at this, I'm glad this was laid out this way. Using front-end startup costs as part of the decision-making process, you need to realize that these two vehicles, which make up quite a bit of the debt here, I asked the fire chief if he could find information on the value of these two assets. So we've got an $80,000 used ambulance and a $260,000 new ambulance. And so if we sold them today, we would get $40,000 approximately for the used ambulance, and we would get $125,000 for the new ambulance. So these are assets, and these two assets are what generate the ultimate billings. Because I sat on the board of an ambulance service, there aren't enough people in northern New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine to sustain an ambulance service, be it public or private, with just transport revenue. Transports are between hospital. That's where they make their money. They know how to staff the ambulance, and they know what the condition of the person is that they're moving, and they make money on that. On the transports, or the transfers, I'm sorry, between hospitals. On transports, where you're waiting for the call, you've got people sitting in the office waiting for the phone to ring, which is generating costs all the time. We would never make enough money in billings for transfers to cover this. And there's not an ambulance service around that doesn't have, I believe, contracts with towns to supplement what they're not making on transfers, because there's just not enough hospitals, not enough patients. We don't have the volume of Midtown Manhattan or Midtown Chicago. So my perspective has always been, towns are kind of subject to the success or non-success of a particular ambulance service making money on their transfers. Our cost, what they bill us is partly based on what they're not being able to get on transfers. That's why I advocate for us to have a public service here. Secondly, we also have the control over the quality of our people, and we have control over the quality of our equipment, because we monitor it ourselves. But this layout does say we're in a deficit situation, even if you take these two asset vehicles out. And so it'll be a while before we can, if ever, be at a viable amount on transfers, transfers. What we don't want to do, I think, is some town ambulance services around the state, and there's 281 EMS units in the state of New Hampshire where you have a firehouse and EMS. They staff differently. There are 28 that staff like us. And it's an expensive service versus hiring a private ambulance service. I think we acknowledge that going in. The benefits that we receive are not as miserable, but clearly we're in better control of our equipment and the quality of the people that we hire by having our own ambulance service. It's a tough call, but that's where I'm at with it. But just remember, these are assets as well as costs. So the 80,000 could be maybe 40,000 if we sold a used one, and it would be 125,000 if we sold a new one. So it's not as bad as it looks, but we are still in, and probably would be for a while, in a deficit mode.
Well, going into it, we knew that it wasn't going to be a moneymaker, nor should it be.
Right.
We were looking at it more as a net zero. It is providing the town, and I know our family personally greatly benefited from the ambulance service not that long ago. So to the peace of mind to have that in town, and some of the people that I've talked to, that means more to them than their taxes being raised. Now, other people I've talked to say it's more of a tax issue. So it is.
It is.
I would love to hear even more from the taxpayers to say we definitely have to keep this service. It's a peace of mind, especially, we've got a lot of people coming to town and a lot of out-of-staters that are benefiting from this. We'll probably never see a financial, I'm not even gonna say windfall, or even a net zero, but is the price or the value of having the security of them here and being able to get the quality employees, is that worth it? And I've heard from both.
I think the reality is, with the transfers, where we do generate income, and they do some transfers, and they've planned that all along, it offsets the cost to the taxpayer, but it clearly will never cover the total costs. I mean, that's just not going to work.
There's a component of this, though, that is, it's impossible to compare private to public.
Right.
Okay, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I go to Dartmouth. I get a bill for $1,500. My insurance pays $500. Dartmouth bills me $1,000 and offers me a payment plan. And if I don't pay, they can take me to collections, they can take me to court.
Right.
So when you're looking at the fact that what we billed was $1.7 million and we adjusted over $1 million, that's what was not paid.
Right.
Towns do not do a good job in the collection industry of going after your citizens and sending them a bill and saying, okay, the insurance company paid $300, our bill was $1,000, we want our $1,000. So unless, and from my view, and I've managed an ambulance system, and I come from a state where it is subsidized by a tax countywide to offset that, because your significant portion of your ambulance is Medicaid and Medicare and non-insured. And all three of those, even the reimbursement levels, do not cover just the basic cost of rolling that ambulance out the door.
Right.
So the difference is when you compare a private to a public, that private is going to chase every single penny it can, and it doesn't care who it ticks off. It doesn't care whose credit it ruins. That's, unfortunately, that's our healthcare system. So, you know, so it's kind of hard to put a town and say the ambulance service, apples to apples, could be compared to any other company, because the other company would be dealing with the same issue. The difference is on this 764, or actually the 381, somewhere between the 381 and the million, they'd be chasing every penny, and their profit rate may only be 2 or 3% when that's said and done. But
I could be wrong here, but most of the private ambulance services in the state have contracts with municipalities as well.
yes,
The ones that don't have their own services.
yeah.
And the
That's
reason for that
that's
is that
being used to help just as the small amount that we get, yes. yeah.
no one's able to break even in this healthcare system. And you did something kind to yourself, Jim. You only billed yourself 15,000. It would be 150,000. When I had the stents put in, it was 78,000,
yeah.
and I was there for 24 hours. So, and that was 6 years ago. So,
Are we going to be able to hear from the EMS Commission?
Well, this is, hopefully with getting one on, I mean, you know, because part of that, with them being part of that process, and again, brought it to you this early.
it's good.
Because we know there's meetings in Octobers and meetings in Novembers, but gosh forbid, I hope we can get a decision by December, because it makes
The budget.
our job easier budgeting, so therefore we don't have this revolving fund, which in reality should be just part of the general fund. And this revenue coming in should be revenue that, yes, it's tracked and we can tell you what's coming in. But the way it's set up now, it's set up as a revolving fund, as if this $400,000 is supposed to pay expenses and what have you. And it doesn't do that. And so it skews Mike's budget
Right.
with the fire department. And so you don't get a real clear picture of our cost in terms of the fact on how we apply it. And I will say to you, you know, that, yes, I mean, you know, if someone said it was going to pay for itself, I would love to see that study or that information, because the only way that you do is that combination that you have other partners paying, and you don't just bill, you are collecting. And collecting can be a nasty, vicious business, and
Yes, it is.
towns aren't good at that. The IRS may be the only agency in the country can get away with it.
It's not even being good at it or not good at it. None of them are breaking even without having some other sources of income coming in. We also owe it to the employees here, because, you know, the employees that work at the fire department clearly need to know whether or not we're gonna go forward with this. And if there are individual issues, billing for a new concern takes time to get it up to wherever it's gonna go. And it'll never get you what you ever want because of the way our health system is constructed. But at least we can improve on it over time. I think the assumption you have to make going in, if we're gonna keep it, is that it'll improve over time and it'll hit a maximum amount.
But you will always be prepared that as
Understood.
part of the public safety plan.
Understood.
You know, we don't look at the police department and say, did they bring in enough contraband, enough fines and forfeitures to pay for themselves? You know, so in a sense, public safety, I mean, it's a collective decision to do the good.
Right.
And this is a business that, unless you've got some big players and some other communities that are willing to tie in, and you're the big player up here in the north, you know.
What I'm seeing though is for what it cost us to what we could hire it out for. If we can save the taxpayers $400,000, it's not like it's a $20,000 problem. It's $400,000. And to get the same service, because anybody you hire has got to be qualified.
Got it, yeah, no argument.
And the way I look at it is when the tires go bad on the ambulance, if it's hired out, they put them on. If they have overtime, it's on them. There's a lot to be added up, and I don't feel like that I'm getting the full figures of what it costs to run that service.
What, help me, Roger, just what are we missing then? I mean,
Well, you're running 24-hour shifts, correct, on the ambulance?
Correct.
So you're only billing 3 people to the ambulance service. So if you've got 2 people on this 24-hour shift, and then the next shift you got 2 more people on the 24-hour shift, that's 4 people billed to the ambulance service, not 3. So I don't know how your figures are coming up. One of the figures that I'm looking at here is on the startup for the new ambulance is $260,000
For the new ambulance, correct?
for the new ambulance. If I look back at the warrant article that was presented to the people, it's $380,000.
Because that includes equipment on the ambulance, I believe.
So is the equipment here on this sheet for the startup cost?
Yeah, well, that was all the equipment.
On the startup cost? I'm not seeing it.
I'm not sure that it's in that specific sheet right there.
That's-
And the difference is that the ambulance, the $260,000 for that ambulance is into a 5-year lease, I believe, with the equipment that's on the ambulance as well. So it's a $90,000 expenditure each year for that first 5 years.
Right.
So that I'm not 100% sure of. And those 3 people that you speak of and stuff, that was prior to me coming here. I'm not sure where bodies were placed. That's one of the things I'm chasing right now is which budget people are in. But when you speak of a 24-hour shift, my understanding is that we had 2 people that were on duty. We added a 3rd person to each shift. And I believe that's what's billed to the EMS revenue account by the finance department is those 3 bodies.
So even though, like I'm saying, there's 2 guys on for 24 hours and then the next 24-hour shift there's 2 more guys on, you don't run them 7 days a week. So for me to get the true cost of what it takes to run this ambulance service is every guy that works a 24-hour shift has to be billed to the ambulance service.
Well, it depends on what you're billing for the ambulance service or why you're doing that. They respond to all calls. They respond on the engine, they respond on the ladder, they respond on the ambulance. It's kind of whichever call comes in. That's one of the reasons why the fires that we've had this year, they've been very successful in being able to control because having 3 or 4 people showing up at that fire on the initial attack keeps that fire controlled. As opposed to previously when we only had 2 people on duty and we did not have a strong call department or a return response. That fire grew exponentially. So those are some of the benefits we have with it. So there are 3 people on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the minimum. Some days I have 4 people on duty and some days I have 5 people on duty, depending on how that staffing kind of rotates through.
So when you have 5 people on duty, 2 get billed to the ambulance, 3 to the fire department.
It's not done by a daily assignment. It's done by the overall budget and how many people we have assigned.
So that's my problem, is not being able to get the true number on what it costs to run this ambulance service, which is what it was supposed to be. When it started up, there was supposed to be a financial report to the select board every 4 months, profit, loss, what it costs to run it.
Correct. There's a lot of things in that initial report. There was supposed to be an increase in the budget each year for, if you will, the inflation and that tick that was put out in that report for every uptick every year. That wasn't followed. The reports to you guys weren't followed. There was a financial, if you will, business aspect to the department that was supposed to be run and met with the town manager. That wasn't followed. And I think some of that contributes to COVID, but I think some of it contributes to the turnover that occurred in the town. When I came in, those were some of the questions that I asked about. And in fairness to Jim, him coming on board, it took him a couple months to kind of, he knew that was out there, we talked about that.
Yep.
But he had so much to get, you know, if you will, and some of the other priorities, it took us until probably July before we could get that EMS commission together. Meeting with the EMS commission, they looked at the results and stuff, and they kind of feel the same way about the ambulance service as Jim was stating. But in all fairness, before we moved that forward, we wanted to get the other people on the board to be able to try to get a meeting to hold together before we came forward with a recommendation or an analogy by the EMS commission. So we're trying to get all of this together so that we can present the package. And I think unfortunately with finance and stuff, that's the way in which, and speaking with the finance director, having those bodies assigned to either EMS or fire based on when they get hired, that's where their overtime comes out of, that's where their, if you will, health benefits, their retirement benefits, their dental plans, everything comes out of those line items so that the people are assigned to EMS or to fire.
So on the $132,000 in overtime last year for the fire department EMS, what percentage do you put onto the ambulance service?
I would have to look at those numbers from last year to see where that number falls. That's a number I do not have, the $132,000 I'm not aware of. I'm not saying that you're.
I got it right here.
I believe you, I haven't seen that, so.
And it's almost 100,000 this year, and we still got a ways to go in overtime. In fact, it's 99,000. So I'm just trying to get an idea on what expenses can go to the ambulance service and which ones can't. It's here somewhere.
Roger, in everyone's defense, it is a philosophical question.
Yep.
Because when we built the system, there was a lot of discussion, and I was in those meetings, about how you attribute costs. So you're going from, our fire department was run with 2 people on per shift prior to transport EMS. You're going to a 3rd person per shift. By state law, you need 2 people on the ambulance. How do you balance that? We had 7 full-time people pre-existing before we took on transport EMS. And when we took on transport EMS, we hired 3 more full-time people. The consensus of the board and the leadership at that time was that they would attribute those costs to the EMS system. But certainly you could go back, and I could certainly see how, what you're thinking is if it takes 2 people, why doesn't that budget reflect 2 people? But the fact of the matter is, if we cut transport EMS out of our operations, the budget wouldn't drop by 2 full-time people times 24 hours a day. In my estimation, you'd revert back to 7 people, so you wouldn't see the reduction that you may think is there. So you kind of have to, if you want to look at the expense side of it, and you want to see how much you could save by not doing it, you'd have to look at what it would revert back to total cost-wise. And it wouldn't be the 2 people times 24 hours a day.
So the overtime that I have that you speak of, I have out of EMS overtime for this year as of August, my expenditures are $16,585. And out of the fire side under overtime, I have $28,000. Current year expenditures, $28,220.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So I'm not sure where your $100,000 is coming from.
So that 4th line down under fire is the fire overtime, right?
Correct.
You have 40,430 budgeted, and you've got 28,220.
The 2 sheets I've got is.
So you're really, in terms of being 2/3 done with the year, you're only $1,000 over in
Correct.
terms of the
Am I
fire.
right?
Correct.
And there's last year's.
Yeah, there's a sheet here that Roger has, and it does say, but I'm wondering.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask because,
Yeah, it's.
I've got all the printouts in front of me on the budget and it's 44,802.
Those aren't the ones I get, I have these ones and these are the budget line items that I follow along to make sure that we're ticking along where we're supposed to be. And I mean, I can tell you the overtime comes in, for any personal time off and injuries. And I have 2 employees that actually there's some of their shifts actually, and Captain Miller being one of them, his shift will reduce some of that overtime expenditure.
So you were saying how much do you have reported in overtime this year?
In overtime, under the EMS line, I have current year expenditures of $28,220.26. And this is as of August, so I'm not sure if it's the beginning of August or end of August that I have on this one.
Mike,
Okay.
I've got
Somehow you got.
28,220.22 at the end of August 31st for
Right.
fire.
Right.
And then I've got $16,585.62 for EMS at the end of August.
Yep, that's what, and I
For
apologize, when I.
44,802.
Yep, that's that's what I have.
Yeah.
Jim, where are those numbers coming from?
I'm gonna have to,
Roger, some of those, that overtime cost, whatever the numbers may be, may also be related to required backfilling. So we need a certain number of people on per shift every day. And when we have a vacancy,
no, if you were talking about the 44,000, what did I write it down?
44,802.
Yeah, 44,802, that's fine, but I mean, I'm gonna have, guys, we're gonna have to go back to tomorrow and ask this, because he's got a sheet from Checkmate, which is our payroll processing, that just runs pure overtime, and it says 99,831, so I don't,
There is the money that, and I don't know if that's maybe what this is reflecting, because we did have the money from the public health network that came in that covered the overtime for the vaccinations that the employees gave that was separate. It wasn't staffing overtime, that was a separate thing that the state, the public health network paid back, and that FEMA paid part of it, I believe. So if, and I'm spitballing on that because I'm not 100% sure, I haven't had that conversation with the finance director.
yeah, because I mean, you and I would both be confused then, because that number would be different than the numbers I'm showing in the report. And
Same report from last year.
yeah, and that, yeah, last year was 132, so I mean, if this is year to date, okay, maybe this was September 27th, so I get that it could have a month in there that my report doesn't have, but that would be another $40-some thousand of overtime for 1 month, and we know that doesn't.
Yeah. And I know last year there were vacancies and stuff that were open, that they were attempting to fill, but I don't have the specifics on how long they were open for, you know, and if they were open, that would have created overtime for people to fill those slots because we didn't have the bodies.
Oh, Roger, you got an excellent question, because that's,
So I got $6,829.58 in overtime in the last 2 weeks. So, and every week, every 2 weeks, we're going $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 in overtime for the fire department EMS.
so one of the things that's driving it, if you look at in the near past term, meaning the last 6, 8, 10 weeks, is we do have a vacancy, so we're required to fill that vacancy at overtime. So what you would see is a corresponding non-expenditure out of the salary line. So one of the things we should do is go back and look at last year's salary lines to see how much they were underexpended, because let's just say we didn't hire a firefighter for a year, but we budgeted for it, the salary line would be to the positive, whatever that salary is, just say $55,000 a year, but it may reflect in the overtime. What Karen Noyes had told us at the time is there's a 2% difference between hiring a firefighter at overtime for a vacancy as opposed to filling the vacancy with a.
no, I understand that, I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but we internally have to find out, why is there a difference in this payroll sheet
Yeah.
versus the sheet I'm given that tells me it's the budget for the town that I'm reporting to you guys that we just reviewed. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm not putting you on the spot, I've never,
It's like, I'd like to know where that number.
yeah,
from
yeah,
myself.
so we're gonna have, gonna have to see.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good reason why this has got out early, so we have plenty of time
Yeah.
to discuss all the issues. Because, yeah, this is, I mean, and I'm gonna say this, if that's not care, then I'm a little nervous. I mean, just in the sense if those numbers aren't accurate,
We have
what, I
one,
mean, because I'm supposed to rely on this report.
so in this, if you look back over history, we have one particular individual that's over $100,000 since 2017 in overtime for the town of Littleton,
Okay.
over 100,000.
So is there a limit that you don't want employees making?
No, but I'm just looking at this compared to hiring out a service when they pay their own overtime. It's an equation that has to be figured in.
When they pay their own overtime?
In other words, if we hired an ambulance service to come in and they had overtime, it's on them.
Yep, okay.
So we have to look at that as part of the equation to make a decision on what it costs us.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I'm just, and these numbers are, as I said, they're new to me, I'm not aware of those
Okay.
numbers, so. And I can tell you, the money that we've spent out, I go through the budget sheets and make sure it's a full-time and it is vacancies that we have. We also had 2 firefighters on injury earlier this year and stuff that also contributed to the overtime. But we're still tracking so that we're gonna be close to budget on those. We might be a little bit over kind of depending on what happens. But, you know, a couple of the big ticket items that I had for callbacks and stuff like that for some of the larger incidents also factor into that.
Mike, and you're thinking that perhaps there's COVID money that came in that
Yeah.
may be making that difference.
We had, I believe, the COVID money that we, and it was one I brought to you guys approved it from the Public
Yeah.
Health Network. I wanna say it was about $48,000.
Okay.
And that was the amount that was paid out to people for the vaccination programs and going to the different towns,
Right.
different sites, and assisting in just vaccinating the North Country.
Okay.
So one of my other concerns is through coastal billing, for 2020 to 2021, you billed out $886,590 and collected $272,643, which is $613,947 that isn't collected.
Where did you get that?
That's right from the billing company.
Oh, okay, I didn't see.
So, in other words, there's over $600,000 that wasn't collected, that can't be collected. And this, all I'm looking at right here is just what got billed and what's not collected. And you add on the cost of running the operation with the overtime and everything else, and I can see us being close to $1 million in what it costs us to run this ambulance service with a profit and loss. So that's where my problem is. You know, when you can hire it out for $400,000 a year for somebody to come in and do this whole thing, it's a substantial amount of money. It's not like it's $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 that I could live with. And it all affects in the tax rate.
It's I mean, it's one of those things, my job is to give you the best, if you will, for the amount of money and the service that you receive.
Yep.
You know, and having our own people that are certified, being able to actually control that aspect of it, understanding what happened previously with some of the things that I've heard from the employees from private businesses when they were here, the fact there was no oversight there, the fact that there were problems, there was patient care issues. Those are the things that concern me as fire chief, not having anything to be able to do control that from a private company that comes in. It creates turmoil in the firehouse and it affects the teamwork of operating out in the field. And I'm talking about stories of people that, you know, going for a, if you will, what I'll call a lift assist for someone that's fallen, and when there's a call for an unresponsive person, the ambulance service refuses to respond to it because they go to the first call they were toned to, and they don't do anything else until that call's done. Those are the type of things that are concerning to me, that sometimes you don't have oversight because it's a private company that's in there, and you can't do anything about it. So that's the concern. So for me, this is the biggest way to be able to get the bang for the buck, to be able to respond to any call that comes in, whether it's a fire, EMS, whether it's a rescue call, a hazardous materials call, or a service call.
So the other thing is we're contracted out with Eastern Sugar Hill. They pay us X amount of dollars a year. And you put that in your plus column. But every time the ambulance leaves and goes to Sugar Hill Eastern, you call in somebody to man the station. Is that figured in there?
That's figured in there as part of the, I believe that's going to be part of the annual costs of that $469,000. I believe there's about $10,000 or $15,000 in there that covers that, if you will, make up for what we call a staffing recall at that point, for the call department and or any full-time members that come in for it.
I believe on our last EMS commission report, about 15% of our calls are what we call concurrent calls, so we get them at once. When we had contractors here, at least my experience with the contractors, is we only had one ambulance, so it was one call at a time. We're now staffing 15% of our calls at the same time as another call is going on, and regularly having both ambulances out on the road in two different types of incidents. That's something that we didn't have with our contractors because they just had the two people here. You know, we just switch gears and switch hats, whatever needs to be done at that given moment, whether it's a fire or a medical call or a rescue. And that's the value that you get when you have cross-trained personnel.
So every time the ambulance leaves down there for a call, is there a paramedic and EMS on board, certified?
There's an advanced level provider on there, whether it's an advanced EMT or a paramedic every single time. Paramedic, I'm gonna say between 40 and 60% of the time. However, I do have 2 individuals that are in paramedic school right now, which are going to get us to paramedic coverage 24 hours a day within the next year when they finish up that program. And that's one of my goals that I've shared with the department is that I wanna have, that's the gold star, to have paramedics 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
We're always at the advanced life support level.
Yes. You know, a couple other things just moving forward is kind of looking at it, like I'm looking at a couple grant opportunities right now for, if you will, some of that staffing, through working in conjunction with the hospital to get money to offset that. Looking at renovations on the station that need to be done, there's the possibility of being able to do that through some of the grants that are out there with COVID response, and the pandemic that occurred. And the reason why I haven't applied for those, and I can't do it right now, is because I can't say that I'm gonna have an ambulance service, you know, if you will, next year. So there is other monies out there that can offset. And that's the kind of stuff that as chief that I'm looking for, is to be able to get grants and able to reduce the cost to the taxpayer in Littleton. That includes, if you will, regional partnerships with other fire departments, that we're all in the same boat where it's like trying to get call and volunteers is very difficult. So sharing resources, which means a little bit more revenue towards Littleton. And I'll be honest with you, I would never pitch this idea to say this is gonna make the town money. I would love to be able to tell you that someday it's gonna at least break even. But to do that, a lot would have to change in order for me to get to that point where we can break even at this point. But I am looking at it as the quality of care and the partnership that I can have with the other departments in town, the police department and the highway department, having control over those people to be able to do that. It makes for a much better service. And I'm not gonna take away from the fact that you're looking at it from a dollars and cents, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing that. And I respect you for it. This is where I stand on it, saying this is what I believe is the biggest bang for your buck.
The other thing we haven't done that private services will do is we haven't sent people to collection agencies. So
Yes.
we haven't billed nearly as aggressively as a private contractor. And so if dollars and cents are the driving factors in the system, then we need to be coming before you with an aggressive collections policy that would support what's seen in the private sector with EMS.
And I would speak against that because I believe that by being aggressive, you know, Mrs. Smith calls for an ambulance and we transport and stuff. It means that they're gonna get that bill when they can't pay for it, and they're gonna get a collections agency coming after them, and it's just gonna continue, and they're gonna be here before you guys. And it's just, I'm not a big proponent of billing for ambulance service anyway. I've always hated that for my 30 years. It's one of the worst decisions we ever did, but that's where we are. If you will, the soft billing that we do right now, I think works to bring in a little bit of revenue for us and stuff to try to offset those costs. And I'll continue to look for ways to offset that cost and make it less for the taxpayers. But Captain Miller is correct. We could go down the aggression route and be more aggressive with collections.
You know, it's like I said, if it costs $40,000, $50,000 a year, once it's all washed out, probably be fine and you wouldn't worry about it. But when it starts getting into $600,000, $700,000, that's a big chunk for the taxpayers.
I haven't finished this study yet, but I looked at the 28 districts in the state that have this type of staffing, where we have EMS and fire using the same people. And the others either have private services or they have separate ambulance, the larger cities have separate ambulance and separate fire. And of those 28, I was able to collect data on 19. Mike made a few calls to some departments, and I just went online and spent 2 days looking at websites. And because there's no standard rules as to how a website should be constructed, some fire chiefs laid out everything and every little number. And what I was looking for was Roger's concern regarding overtime. And there's a general concern in this community, and it goes back, I think you referenced it, to 25 years ago, where the thumb was on the overtime scale, and they had worked out a system, and they got caught doing it. And that's never gone away, and that's kind of unfairly given the number of years involved, and we got whole different staffs, but that's still out there as a concern. So I looked. So Littleton, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but of the 18, the budget for overtime versus the full budget for fire. So I was looking for the percentage differences. And we're at 6-point-something%, and the highest community of those 18 is at 8%. And the lowest one, and it's a problem, and I haven't finished it yet because I have to go back and check the numbers, is at a very small number, and I think I just didn't get the right numbers. So as soon as I finish this, you'll get it. But Littleton stands a little bit beyond halfway higher than, I think there's 9 services, 9 or 10 below less, and then there's 8 or 9, above, and it's in that category. So we're in a position where among the 18, we're just a little bit above the middle.
Was you using my numbers?
I'm sorry?
Was you using my numbers?
I know, I use the numbers that's in the current budget. So the other thing I found out is some of the fire chiefs admitted year-to-date in their annual report, and one town had 25,000 budgeted, and in 6 months they were at 43,000. So I used that number, and of course if you annualize that number, you're getting up to close to $100,000, right? But anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. The town looks as if, or the fire department looks as if it's sitting just a little above the halfway point among the 18 that I was able to get data on. I didn't take data if they didn't give us, because the other important thing is the volume of calls. There were some fire departments that simply didn't give their volume of calls data, so I skipped over those. So I missed 10 of the 28, but I have data on 18. So it's not the highest, obviously, percentage-wise. It's just a little above, in terms of actual dollars, a little above half.
I just have a clarifying question to ask. You mentioned $700,000 or $800,000 for the cost of the ambulance, and I'm curious as to where that number comes from. Only because when I look at my budget sheet and stuff, it's $687,475 for the budget that's approved, if you will. My understanding is that part of that was the $300,000 or $400,000 that is supposed to be paid to an ambulance service, and that's, at the same time, we look at about the $280,000 revenue type of thing to offset that. So I'm just making sure I want to be able to speak to the numbers correctly, and if I'm missing something, I'm curious as to what that is.
So which number was that you're looking for, Mike?
For the EMS budget, I have $687,475 of the total ambulance EMS services, what's budgeted for the town.
Okay.
So I was curious because I've heard $700,000 and $800,000 as numbers that you mentioned to the ambulance service. So I'm just trying to figure out that's another $200,000 or so out of that, or $150,000.
Well, one thing I was looking at was the $613,000, almost $614,000 that got billed and not collected.
Yep.
That's part of it. Startup costs for the ambulance and everything else can be added in there on a, what, a 5-year breakdown?
Yeah, and that's down under, if you look at the bottom for the EMS ambulance lease payment through 2024, that's the 82,754. So I don't want to double bill, you know, if you will, like in the spreadsheet that Jim gave you, he's got $260,000 for a new ambulance. That's part of that's where that's broken down each year, so.
Okay,
And I'll say about the 600 some odd that was billed and not collected.
Yeah.
Some of those are what I call not real dollars. So the town has signed a contract with Medicare, which basically pays us, let's just say $400 per call. We bill $1,600 per call. So that difference between the 400 and the 1,600, because we have a signed contract with Medicare, are prohibited by law from going after the patient for it.
so you call that adjustments is what you call it.
So those have become adjustments or write-offs, but they kind of hang out until the town takes action on it. As it looks like it's money that we could have collected and that we just, maybe through error or not enough diligence or whatnot, haven't collected. That money was really never on the table. That's how, like, when you look at the Littleton Regional Healthcare Annual Report, that they've given $100 million in charitable care this year. It's because it's the difference between what they bill and what they actually collect. We know what we'll collect from Medicare. We could bill $1 million per ambulance call. Medicare doesn't care. They're gonna pay us the rate approved based off of our district and so on and so forth.
And that's true with every town or EMS service that does 911 contract service.
And we have different write-offs for different insurance companies based off of the agreements that have been signed and in place. So it is the revenue side of that is complex, and really it doesn't make sense. And anybody who understands business and a nuts and bolts type of thing, where I buy a pound of bolts for $1 and I resell them for $2. Unfortunately, that's not how healthcare works. We're required for instance, for Medicaid patients, we have to provide our service for $120 a call. We're required by law to do that. Doesn't matter, whatever it costs is whatever it costs. That's what they'll pay us. So sometimes, you know, the dollars and cents just don't seem to make sense logically because of the way that healthcare finance on the revenue side of things work.
Can I just say something? Just to get away from the line items, I don't have one of these reports, a whole lot of them to look at. But I think the EMS pilot program is a great program. I think it's really valuable to have that service here within our town and not contracted out. As Chief has said, it brings control to his department. He's able to control the level of patient care that's going on. I had to take advantage of calling 911 to have services brought to me. It's, you know, it's not going to be a moneymaker or a revenue maker for the town. I think the goal would be a net zero so that we can have the services. And the issue with the overtime, you have to think of it as the human issue. You're going to have overtime when you don't have a person filling in that position. So we need to just, you know, look at, it's tough because you get sucked into the line items and the nitty gritty, but you need to look at the bigger picture as well. So I think that this is a great program. I think that the town should continue with it. I don't know if you were considering not, it's hard to tell, but.
Well, it's the money issue that if we could hire it out for $400,000 and you did a 911 call, do you think you won't get professional service?
Historically, we have done that in the town. We've hired it out to contractors and it's been a negative experience. So I don't see why we would give up so quickly on this one.
That's what we're trying to find out too, Courtney. You know, if the taxpayers are saying, we love this level of service, we want it to be this way, and yeah, our taxes, it may adjust our taxes, but this is really what we want. You know, we certainly want to go with the voice of the people, of the taxpayers.
But control the cost.
Right. So it's
sorry, Chad, sorry. Like Chad has said, this is healthcare. I mean, you think there's going to be money in it, but unfortunately there's not. And in an area where we have a lot of Medicare and Medicaid, you're not going to see the big bucks from it. That's just how it is, unfortunately. That's how the healthcare system is set up.
Yeah, we don't have the volume of people living here anyway.
Yes.
And the other thing I do want to point out is that we do have the ability to staff 2 ambulances. And if I had a third ambulance, there are several calls that we would have been able to staff a third ambulance for with the use of the call department. But we just don't have it, and a couple times the second ambulance has been out of service for a mechanical issue. But we do have the depth to go there where the previous contractors were here with just 1 ambulance, and that's what they were covering. So it gives us a little bit of depth there as well.
So you gotta somehow figure out how to pick up the level of service, because one of my customers was sick at his house, wanted to go to his doctor in Lancaster. Called you guys, you showed up at his house, couldn't take him, because you couldn't go to Lancaster. His wife ended up taking him in her car.
Correct. So I was actually on a call that meets, may not be the same one, meets all those criteria. And I'll tell you, by state law, we are required to bring the patient to the closest facility. If it's splitting hairs, mile or 2, 3 miles, the closest, most appropriate facility, we would do it. And I've been at services where I worked in Pinkham Notch, where it's the same north and south. Hey, we'll bring you where we need to go. But by state law, on the call I was on, I couldn't in good conscience say, as much as I wanted to get that person to where their doctor is and where they get their care, as an emergency ambulance transport, I'd be violating the law, bringing that patient 2 weeks. I'd also not be able to bill that patient for it, because all the agreements we have with the insurers basically say the same thing. And if I'm bringing somebody further, what if the person wants to go to Boston directly for a similar type of thing? The insurance company's like, no, we're not playing this game. You go to the closest facility. So there are sometimes, rules that are beyond our control that we have to follow.
And it goes even further than that. The State Bureau of EMS, and if you want to talk to them, you're more than welcome to. But if we did do that, they can come. They can actually, the provider that was on that call can lose their ability. Basically, they'd lose their job because they'd lose their license. But they can also pull the town of Littleton's ALS license, so we can no longer perform ALS care, if you will, as a ramification of violating those protocols and RSA by not transporting to the closest medical facility.
And I'd say that we have transported to other hospitals in LRH before, most of the time Cottage, but it's because we're in the Easton area and it's a split difference, and the patient says, I get my care at Cottage. And so, all right, that works for us. So I don't want to say like it never happens, but it really has to be, within a couple miles, so to speak.
Just from the research that I've done, I know that there's no money in 911 calls.
Correct.
So how do you step up to the plate to do transports from Littleton Hospital to Hanover?
That's, in order to get to that level, again, that's one of the other things that right now, that's kind of the, if you will, I've heard that, I'm gonna call it a carrot kind of dangled out there. There's a requirement that we have to negotiate with the union and stuff before we actually enact that. There are a few courses that all of the employees need to take, which I'll call PIP training. That's basically the synonym of it. But they get that training and stuff, and then those emergency patients we can actually transfer or transport to Dartmouth or to Concord. And we're actually working with the hospital right now just because they don't have the capabilities, but if we had somebody that was having a heart attack in downtown, we would be able to recognize that with a paramedic level service. Instead of transporting them to LRH, we would take them to Dartmouth or to Concord, because that is where they need to be as soon as possible for that cardiac cath. There are some patients that may not be stable enough to make that ride, and we may have to go to Littleton, but those are some of the things that we're looking at. But in order to get to that level, Littleton Regional Hospital wants to do some stuff with us on that as well. But they're kind of like, are you guys going to be doing the ambulance service? Because they don't want to commit those resources if in another year we're not going to be here doing it.
Right.
And the same thing from an ALS standpoint for our neighboring communities in the region. A lot of people are looking towards us to say, what are you guys going to be able to do in the future? How are you guys going to be able to do this? And the discussions, in theory, we can do stuff, but we just need to see where the town wants to go and how we want to do this. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And I think that's really where the EMS commission plays a big role with us too, to be able to look at these things and say, are they beneficial? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to do something that's beneficial for, say, Franconia, but hurts Littleton. So, and again, using the commission to look at it from a regional standpoint and to look at it from a local standpoint. That's where I want to involve them, hopefully as an advisory board for you guys moving forward, you know, to be able to share that information, be transparent with everybody, and show what we're doing and how we're getting there. I apologize, my mask keeps slowing down.
Yeah, it's really a growth of the system, and it's
Yeah.
hard to plan for growth when we're trying to determine, you know, we're gonna keep the system we have even.
And you would probably need to know too, if you're venturing out or reaching out to other towns, you would need to know before their budget season,
Yes. It's,
if they're,
and I don't anticipate that I'm gonna be able to do anything coming into this budget season coming up, other than providing mutual aid. And if we do go mutual aid to them, if that increases, we can bill for those transports, we do. But looking beyond that in those partnerships, and if we come into that training with LRH and we can do more with those emergency transfers to get patients where they need to go. You know, especially in this pandemic right now, we are seeing a bottleneck at the hospital where they can't get patients out because everybody's ICUs are full and everybody is having the same problems. Looking at that from a systemic standpoint, it's like we'd like to be able to help with that solution and get, especially our residents, where they need to be for the best care possible. So my hope is that as we go into next year and stuff, if this is a system that stays, that I can start working with the neighboring communities and talk about what it means and kind of look, because and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what a price tag looks like for that, for an ALS service versus a full transport service. So that would be something that I'd research with them and talk to the neighboring communities about and work with them in a partnership.
There is a philosophical issue here that none of us can address, and it's a legitimate concern that certain people voice, and that is private sector versus public sector.
Mm-hmm.
There was significant not resistance, but people being upset when the select board, and I was sitting on the board and I went through this last time, when we decided to go with a different ambulance service from a different town, rather than a hometown, family-owned business. A lot of pushback. And it was partly the family-owned, and it was partly, and more importantly, the private versus public. Keep as much as you can private, because we want small government here. We don't want big government. And then there was concerns about, you know, you're gonna add another negotiating group because you've now got enough for another union. So and those are all legitimate concerns, but they're there. And the only way to ever address those is over the long term through public relations and however you can do it, because there needs to be some shifting in attitude if in fact we're gonna have this. As Chief Smith can vouch, when we went through building a new building for the police department, instead of having it over at the town building, or at the there was enormous resistance to moving anything out of that opera house, because that's where everything had been forever. And so there's resistance to growth, and there's resistance to privatization. And it really has nothing to do with anything you guys are talking about or what our concerns are. It's a public relations issue that's into the city.
I want to be able to provide the information to them, and they can make their own decision, but I just want them to have the true number and the true picture. I can watch my people, and I can, you know, basically control, and they're doing a great job giving a great service right now, and I want that to continue. That's what I want for the residents, that's what I want for my family. So that's what I want to see happen here.
I think you have to think about how do we define whether the pilot project is successful or not? And clearly finances are a component of that. And if so, to what degree, if the finances are the key component, then allowing us to bill at the same level that the private agencies are that would replace us, you know, would be important so that you could get that true dollar for dollar comparison. And you know, you heard and I personally philosophically agree completely with Chief on the bill. It's the dirtiest side of what we have to do, because we're really caregivers, and that, you know, we're service people, we're out there trying to help, and, you know, to be like, but can you sign right here, because we gotta bill you. I know you're really sick right now, and you just called 911, and that's like the day you'll remember for the rest of your life, but I need you to sign this billing form. None of us like any part to do with that.
Okay, good. Good information. We'll hear more from EMS and as we go.
So-
Thank you, guys.
So what is our time frame for, did we agree to something in terms of time frame, or?
We wanted
what are
to,
our next steps?
you mean the next BOS meeting?
Yeah.
Which is 10:25,
Just some additional updates.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right, good, thank you.
Yeah. So the last thing on the agenda is public comment,
Of course.
of course.
I think that's the first time I have been on a meeting for the last 15 years. Finally, that's not because I want to give them a compliment, I'll give them no compliment. Finally, somebody of you three, Roger Emerson, he really hit the nail right on the head. And the other reason is this, not because the ambulance doesn't do good job, they do good job. What Rogers was talking about, it's budgeting, it's money. It is some money. It's the difference of $600,000 or something like that. Well, anyway, that's what, this is meaning that Rogers, after look at it through all his paperwork, he really start to care about the taxpayer. This money, it's not about the good care that these guys, they give it to the patients. It's about money. It's about money. Now, when they do the budget, when they presented the budget to the town, okay? The budget is gonna be on a low side of the under $27, under $47 that the Medicare give you for each patient.
I just used some examples.
Okay. Always gonna be, because every time I see a budget, or the fire department, or the police department, or the DOT department, it's always increase. $2 million over here, $1.5 million over there, and stuff like that. And whatever Roger say, it's right, because he's got it right in the paperwork over there, in black and white, that there is a difference, discrepancy between the budget and the town budget. Now, what I'm trying to say is, on the next meeting, when the budget committee, they start to really, that's why, not to give you, I don't like it, that you table the common tax rate, you don't table that. You gotta give it to the budget committee right away, like that they got something to work on, my dear friend. That just mean, when they come up with the budget, if they present it to the budget committee, push it to you guys and then to the budget committee, what kind of budget are they gonna give them? $2 million? Or you giving it the low budget? What kind of budget are you gonna give it to them? You're gonna give them a budget, $1.5 million and stuff like that, when you don't need to spend that kind of money. Even in overtime, you don't spend that kind of money. But that's because that's how much you would have charged the patients. Because if you would have charged the patients the money that you're supposed to charge, and you put them all together, you're gonna end up with about $2 million in budget. And you know who pays the consequences, my dear friends? Taxpayer. I hope you guys agree with me, but that's what it is. That's why Rogers put everything on the table, which, oh God, that's why I'm late, because I like to hear you talking. Rogers put everything on the table with the chip, with the captain over there, and you wanna know what the hell is going on. Do they come up with a good explanation? No. No, and no. You know why? Because when they come up with a budget, and I'm gonna ask you, I wanna see the budget. When they come up with a budget, they don't gonna come up with that budget, that is lower. How much money they make a year. No, they're gonna come up with a budget.
Rudy, is there anything else that you want to
No,
share? I
just-
think you've made your point.
No, I'm just.
So is there any,
I just wanna
anything?
compliment, I
Okay.
can compliment the one of the selectmen.
Good.
I never do
And I
that.
think you heard that,
Yep.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, and is there anything else?
Yeah, I believe that, the town manager, he should come up right away, and give it the town tax rate to the budget committee right away.
Yeah, we're
No
not,
table.
we're not ready to talk the tax rate yet. We still
No, no,
have
it's
a lot
right
of-
here,
but-
it's right here.
No, we have, it was something different. We already went over that, Rudy. It was whether we give the money back to the taxpayers or not, or do we keep it as an overlay or in reserve? So
Town tax rate, is that what it is?
no, this was something entirely different. The tax rate will come later on. We're right at the beginning stages of that. You will hear when we establish the tax rate, but it's a ways off. So,
And what decision you made with the bank? I wanna talk to people.
we're still
Oh,
talking,
you still talking?
still talking, yeah.
Do you still got in mind that $2 million for the family,
We're still talking.
You're still talking
Yeah,
with the
we're still talking.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, we have one other item.
We do?
We have to schedule a meeting to do his evaluation.
Oh, okay.
His date is October 12th. He started on April 12th.
It's actually October 8th is the exact 6 months, isn't it?
And we have to meet later tonight and do this assessment. I'm just joking.
Is that something you want to schedule now, or can
It's
we?
important that, given the situation we found ourselves in, or you found yourselves in this recruitment, it's important that we do this one right on time.
Right.
So that, and of course, the results are just ours, but I think it's important not to leave anybody with a misinterpretation here, out in the community who.
So we will schedule a work session?
Well, I've looked, the format is the same, the questions are the same as in the past. It's a matter of sitting down and filling out the form, coming to consensus. And
But it'd be just the three of us.
just three of us, and it's the only time we can have a meeting when the town manager doesn't have to be there or shouldn't be there, really.
Okay, all right.
So we should do that, it
Maybe
doesn't-
schedule with Vicky, get something.
Yeah.
Okay, posted, okay.
That would be good.
All right, good, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Who did that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, oh, sorry.
Jim? I'll take that back when
So
you're
I'll
done
let-
with it, but I just want you to, I don't know if you've seen that. That was a study done, okay. Hold on.